Recording and live.
Evening, welcome to the May 2nd, 2024 meeting of the Athens-Clarke County Planning. For those of you viewing the meeting remotely, you will find the meeting agenda on the Planning Department website at accgov.com/planning. For those of you attending in person today, you can find the agenda on the table by the door, as well as a sign-in sheet. For each agenda item, we will begin with a report from the ACC planning staff. That will be followed by a presentation of the applicant, not to exceed. We will then hear from members of the public. 3 minutes are allowed for any member of the public who wishes to address the commission. When addressing the commission, please provide your name, address, and the nature of your interest in the project, and direct your comments to the planning commission and not to the applicants. The audience is instructed to refrain from applauding or jeering the speakers. Exhibits may be displayed by the applicants or by members of the public speaking at the podium. Written correspondence received by noon yesterday has been forwarded to the Planning Commission and is part of the public record. Any additional written materials to be placed into the record must be read during public comment within the 3-minute time limit. For all speakers, please pay attention to the timing device near the podium. The device will display a yellow warning light when you have 30 seconds left, and then a red light when your time is up. After the public comment period, the applicant or their representative may request a 2-minute response. After that, the applicant will take their seat in the audience. At that point, the public portion of the agenda item is closed and the Planning Commission will proceed to discuss the item. We will receive no additional public or applicant comments after that point unless requested by a Planning Commissioner. Finally, please note that the microphones in this room are very sensitive and that the meeting is being broadcast live and recorded. Please turn off or silence your cell phone. So at the top of our agenda, under general business, first item is introduction of staff reports and other documents submitted to the Planning Commission at this meeting into the official record. Do I have a motion? By Kristen, second by Sarah. All in favor? Any opposed? Item 2 is approval of the March 7th, 2024 Planning Commission minutes.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion approved by Joey, second by Monique. All in favor? Any opposed? Item 3 under general business is May courts review and public comment. Do we have any?
No report.
Okay. Is there anyone in the audience here to comment on? Okay, so that brings us to the old business section. Our agenda and item 1 is 2990 Barnett Shoals Road, item number PD-2024-02-0219. And we'll begin with this.
Hello, my name is Wick Pritchard, here representing staff. Thank you for the clicker. 2990 Barnett Shoals Road, just read the PD number. So the request by the applicant is to amend the snap finger PD. And the request is to replace the binding use for this parcel, which was for a church, with 22 residential single-family lots. The lots are very similar to those surrounding it. Those surrounding it, as you can see, are in the 5,400 to 9,000 square foot range. Most of these are going to be 7,500. The access is going to be off Sorensen Ridge, coming right there to the left of the red dotted line. One thing to know about this is that there are no waivers requested, and we'll get to it later, but of some importance is the wooded buffer along Barnett Shoals there, looking to the north. And sorry, my eyes are, I'm trying to get some glasses here soon. But you can see this lot right here. At one point, I studied history, so this was a little bit fun. You had to go back into the Snapfinger PD. This has been designated for a commercial space, for a school space, for a recreational space, or a gambling space. No, I'm kidding. Not for gambling space, but its latest is for a church space. The buffer along Barnett Shoals Road, the green forested buffer, I believe was put in place when it was designated for a commercial space. Here it is, as the RS8. The applicant has kept the buffer, which, as it came into the PD originally, was 100 foot. Eventually, through the PD's life, it was amended to go to 50 feet. And the applicant has kept it at 50 feet along Barnett Shoals right there, as you can see. The cul-de-sacs align with existing streets. And you can tell the lot size here is very similar to the parts of the Snapfinger PD that are surrounding it. These are some examples of the housing that are proposed. Single story. And then this is some of the layout that is proposed. Again, very similar to the houses and the parcels immediately surrounding this in the Snapfinger PD along Sorensen Ridge. It is compatible with the comprehensive plan. It increases the supply of housing. It's in an area where if one chose, they could walk to a coffee shop, they could walk to Barnett Shoals Elementary, they could walk to houses of worship. So it incentivizes alternative transportation modes. They could walk to the UJ Vet School. And it's also compatible with the zoning map and ordinance. What we do recommend is that we have binding home elevations and aesthetics and size to ensure consistency with the rest of the Snapfinger PD, the houses immediately surrounding it. So we recommend approval with conditions. One condition is that the buffer along Barnett Shoals Road, stretching from lots 1 through 8, be labeled undisturbed buffer strip. Right now, it is only labeled as conserved canopy, but we recommend that it be labeled buffer strip for consistency's sake with the rest of the PD. We also recommend that a condition be that the houses follow the scale of submitted renderings and floor plans with an elevation of a single-story building or house and an area of no more than 1,800 square feet for the home. Okay, thank you.
I just have a question.
Huh?
The condition regarding the buffer strip refers to it by square footage rather than width. But you described it as a 50-foot buffer strip. Is there any reason, 20,000 square feet suggest it could be not a rectangle. They could make it really narrow in one part. I don't know why they would, but I just wondered why we are going by square footage rather than what seems to be more salient.
Yeah, I may have put that just because I'm looking at trees as the arborist in square feet a lot of time.
Okay.
I think that may make sense. I mean, I'm deferring to other two.
I think the language, and correct me if I'm wrong, the note that's on the binding site plan does call it out as a 50-foot deep. The main takeaway from point number 1 is that it be an undisturbed buffer strip, but I hear your point about the 20,000 square feet. That wouldn't supersede the 50-foot width.
Okay, so it would be as depicted on the plan would be binding, so they couldn't.
With that note, with the label to say undisturbed.
Okay, and my second buffer strip question is there was a slide about 4 slides back that shows also a buffer strip on the right side of the parcel. Against those other houses on the next cul-de-sac over. And That's not part of the condition, right? If they
Correct.
want to provide that buffer strip, they don't have to.
Well, that part of it, and correct me if you already know this, or that part of it is acting just as their conserved canopy requirement,
Okay,
not necessarily as a buffer strip. It just happens to all be in one place.
got it.
Like there. Oh, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. No, nothing else.
I'm going to sit down so I don't make any more bad jokes.
That won't prevent you.
The staff report, we will hear from the applicant.
Good evening. My name is Frank Pittman with Pittman Agrarian Engineering. We're here representing the developer of 2990 Barnett Shoals. As Wick mentioned, this is 6 acres. As you enter into the Snapfinger PD, it's been approved for a handful of different things over the years. The plan here would be to build 22 houses, very similar to what's there. We had a meeting with the neighborhood back, it's been 3 or 4 months ago now, to hear what they wanted. And what they wanted were houses that were similar in size. They didn't want houses bigger than what they have. They didn't want multi-story houses. So we've been through a few iteration plans based on some of that feedback. And what we've presented is in keeping with what's there. The lot sizes are the same as what's there. The houses are the same as what's there. The scale of the houses, being 1 story with garages is similar to what's there as well. As Wick mentioned, there are two short cul-de-sacs that line up with existing streets. No lots are accessed off of Sorensen Ridge or off Barnett Shoals. They're all accessed off these interior streets. We are proposing the buffer along Barnett Shoals. And to answer your question a minute ago, that buffer on the right will have to stay there because that is community green space. That's not on lots. So that would be, nobody would be able to clear that. That's HOA property. And we set that up for that reason to buffer those other houses. The plan would be for these houses to be priced in the low 300s, which, we hear this a lot. We talked about this, about the need for affordable housing in Athens. As bad as that sounds, that's pretty affordable in where we are in today's housing market. So I think it provides much needed affordable housing stock in an area of town that continues to grow and that people want to live in. With that, I would, I guess, open up any questions. Staff has recommended approval. All departments are good with the plan as shown, and I'll leave it up to any questions. And if anybody wants to speak, I'll save a little bit of time for maybe a rebuttal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pittman. Well, if we have questions for you during the discussion, we'll ask. Okay. All right, is there any member of the public here to speak in favor of this application? Is there any member of the public here to speak in opposition to this application? Okay, that concludes the public comment portion, and we'll bring it behind the rail. That's all. Alex.
I'll go ahead and start with the motion to approve with conditions.
Second.
So motion by Alice, second by Sarah Guerin. Any discussion of the motion?
Can I just make one more comment?
Please.
I'm really pleased to see this development. I think the process worked really well here. I particularly like the little bit of a different kind of floor plan. We don't have enough of this kind of floor plan, I don't think. And I appreciate the apologies about the price point, but let's be real, that's an affordable price point for a significant piece of the rung of the ladder in our community. So I'm just very pleased, and the location's great. So
Any other comments?
So I wanted to touch on the question from setting about stories. So if just to understand defines single story. That means that somebody couldn't decide to finish their attic out and live in the attic, right? And so what is the technical definition of 1.5 stories? Is it just essentially that you're finishing out?
If you have conditioned livable space above the main floor,
That's,
it's a story and a half.
okay.
The jury doesn't.
Yeah, I guess just wanted to sort of, yeah, I don't know, Pat, if you wanted to pick up on that or if you felt like you're satisfied.
Yeah, no, I'm satisfied with that. I understand the staff's reason for that recommendation, and to the extent that it limits square feet and therefore affects these houses at a lower price. I think there's good policy reasons for the county to prefer it that way. And it sounds like from the applicant, they prefer it that way, the neighbors prefer it that way, so.
Yeah, that's what
I
I'm
wanna-
thinking. That's what engagements happen and that's what they're all happy with. And
Yeah, I'll just echo what Alice said. I think it seems like a great project. It provides much needed additional housing for Athens at a price point where there's particularly limited supply. So it seems great. Any further discussion? Mark or Stephen, do you want to do a roll call? I don't know who's on deck.
Kinman, this is a motion to approve with conditions. Kinman,
Yes.
Beresford,
yes.
Gehring,
Yes.
Morales,
Yes.
Taft,
Yes.
Sams,
Yes.
Sanders,
Yes.
Tucker. Yes. Motion passes unanimously.
That brings us to item 2 on the old business section of our agenda, 247 Pulaski Street, -270 Newton Street and 360 West Hempstead Avenue. Number SUP 2024-02-0240. Before we open it up for the staff report, I'm going to recognize Commissioner Alex Sams.
Yes, I'm a member or alumni member of this fraternity. I've had some involvement in the planning of this. I have no financial involvement or anything like that, but due to that, for the good of the community or the good of Athens-Clarke County and the applicant, I am going to recuse myself from this.
Okay, thank you. And the record reflect that Mr. Sams is exiting the room during the discussion and creation of this item. The staff report.
This is a special use 2024-02-0240. The request is a special use in the commercial downtown, the West End downtown character area. The plan is to renovate an existing fraternity property, replacing a secondary assembly structure, modifying and increasing the parking area, modifying the rear entries to the house, and some associated site changes such as with ramps, walkways, and a kitchen storage area. There are 4 variances that are part of this request. Staff is not supporting those variances. The first variance requested a reduction in the required landscape buffer between a right-of-way and a parking area, a reduction in the required setbacks of retaining walls from rights-of-way, reduction in required ground floor transparency and allowance of alternative treatments, reduction in requirement of sidewalks to be placed along public street frontages. 247 Pulaski Street is the primary lot. That is the lot where the existing fraternity structure and secondary structure exist. There is parking on that lot that also extends into 363 West Hancock that is part of this fraternity use. And there are 2 vacant lots that would be incorporated into fraternity use as part of this application. Right now, these are all separate parcels. The fraternity use has been there for a very long time. And so it does not have any sort of special use on file or anything like that, as most of our Greek houses do, because that didn't exist And so with this plan where there's going to be changes in incorporating of new area into the use, that is how they are coming before you for the special use requirement, even though the fraternity use is in place and not changing. The downtown future land use designation would not be impacted by this request. The commercial downtown zoning designation would remain. It would simply have special use added. 247 Pulaski Street is the main portion of the property. Of the 3 lots involved, it's much larger than the others combined. This property does have a local historic landmark designation. And so changes on this property do go before the Preservation Commission for approval. The other 3 parcels that are part of this request are not part of a local landmark designation. And so it's only things on this lot that have gone before the Preservation Commission. Some images of Reese Street. Reese Street's to the south of the property. You can see the corner of Reese and Newton Street. Newton is what runs along the western side. There are 2 parcels on Newton Street involved that are currently undeveloped. And then the Hancock property at the northern side of the property, which is already used for parking, would remain as parking, but would be redesigned. Looking at the existing and proposed site plans. Point.
Yeah, the green.
The green thing. And so these are the existing lots that are undeveloped. They would have parking added to them with the existing parking lot redesigned. The parking that is behind the house would be redesigned, and the secondary structure, the existing one, would be rebuilt with a shifted placement. The 4 variances that are part of this request, this plan is marked to kind of show you where those are located. The blue lines that you see relate to areas of sidewalk. The red is for a reduction in the landscape buffer. The 2 vacant lots will become parking areas. That's also where the setback for retaining walls variance comes into play. And then where you see the green, those are the areas where the reduced transparency and allowance of alternative treatments is proposed. The front elevation and rear elevation, there are some changes to the rear entries that are shown on this plan. At the front elevation, the changes relate to fencing and kitchen storage areas to the southern side of the building. Looking at the front and the Reese Street elevation of the new secondary structure. And then looking at the Newton Street and the northern elevations of that structure. Staff's recommendation is that the variances proposed are incompatible with the 2023 comprehensive plan. The variances do not support the need for walkability and human scale of development. The project is compatible with the future land use map and the zoning map. It's not increasing the intensity of fraternity use. The certificate of appropriateness approval has been received for the main parcel that is requires that review. Approval with conditions is recommended. In the event that the zoning request is approved without granting of the variances, the plan be amended to comply with all applicable ordinances, and all other elements of the plan shall be considered binding. That a combination plat to have the entire property combined into a single parcel shall be recorded at or before the time of permitting review. This completes the staff report.
Can I just ask one clarifying question before we turn over to the applicant? I don't know if can you jump back one more slide? It's about the transparency requirement.
Yes.
On the first floor
Mhm.
of this building. And I take it the bottom picture there is what's facing Newton Street
Yes.
for what they call the shack. And the requirement in the commercial downtown zone is that, is it 30% transparency on the ground floor? Some percentage, and they don't meet that. And the staff report noted that they also don't meet that for the floor that does have windows on that facade. And I wondered, what's our ordinance say, or what is the planning department's policy as far as what is the ground floor? Because the applicant says this is not a two-story building. There's the habitable building, and then there's a foundation that's filled in with dirt, just because of the grade of the streets adjacent to there. So I wondered, would we not normally consider the floor that they use, that it has the windows, as the ground floor, given the topography there? Or are we asking that they put a basement, put transparency on?
I understand what you're asking. And so the way the code is written, it actually includes a definition about the first floor, and it relates to the 10 feet of height from the height of the road grade, of the public right-of-way grade, the street grade. And so 10 feet above that is what the code is considering to be the ground floor. Obviously, that is, this is part of the commercial downtown character areas and things like that. It's looking more at your traditional downtown zero lot line, sidewalk up at the front door kind of thing that you'll see in the core of downtown, where there's not going to be as much of a question which they're your first floor. In this case, that is why staff mentioned the level of transparency on the actual use of the first floor. So that in your consideration, since variances and things are involved, you can consider that in the request.
Okay, so just procedurally, if, with regard to the third variance to modify the requirement for ground floor transparency, could we grant that variance but specify that we're not giving a variance from the percentage transparency, we're giving a variance from the ground floor? We're defining the ground floor as being the only habitable floor of this building. Would that be, because I agree with staff that the one habitable floor of the building also doesn't comply with the transparency requirement. And so given the peculiar topography, I can see a reason maybe for a variance to what we treat as the ground floor, since there is no floor below that floor.
If the planning commission, as part of the discussion, I think, wanted to entertain that variance with a new distinction of where the ground floor begins, I think you could make that as part of the PD. You could alter the condition to include that language. I think even if you did that, if we used, I think on the image there, it does say ground. The applicant did propose a ground line that kind of goes through. If we're still talking about that percentage that's required, it still looks like it's under the percentage, right? So you may change the determination, but still require the percentage to be met.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. So if that concludes the staff report, we will now hear from the applicant.
If you want to go.
Good evening, Commission and staff. I'm Mark Murray. I'm a resident of Clarke County. I happen to be the president of the Georgia Beta House Association, which is the applicant. I'm joined by Sam McGowan, who's our engineer and also a neighbor of the property. Before we get into the details of the variances, which Sam will address, sort of the technical nature of those, I just want to give you a little bit of a preamble of why we're doing what we're doing. We're making improvements to a house that's been around 150 years. We think it's one of the most iconic properties in certainly the city, if not the state. There's a large alumni base. We've got 3,000 active alumni. And it's a nonprofit, which is sort of remarkable. We've owned the really valuable piece of property for 95 years through a nonprofit, which we think is pretty special. What we wanted to do with the property is make the improvements really to preserve the mothership, what I call the mothership. It's the 150-year-old Ross Crane House. The facilities that will be improved in the back is really designed to use these facilities in lieu of the mothership or the old the old historical house, and provide more usefulness in the back area. In addition to that, you all have approved a number of developments to the west of the property. So there's a lot more activity in that region, and we wanted to do a better job of controlling ingress to the property to prevent trespassing, which we've seen an uptick in the past couple of years due to just the number of people that'll be living in that area. So that's the reason for the improvements. What we've done to finance this is really going out to alumni base, and we have 500 plus donors, which out of the goodness of their heart are donating for the improvements. And really with the condition and almost the understanding that we would limit all improvements to the back of the house, or so the west side of the property that couldn't be seen from downtown. So as you go down Washington Street, we wanted to preserve the look, the feel, the visibility of the iconic historical home. And I think we've done a good job with it. The engineer and the staff have done a good job of distilling it into 4 variances. Y'all touched on variance 3. I'm going to just limit my comments to variance 4, which I think is probably the most important for the old guys. Sam will address maybe some of the technical aspects of variances 1 and 2. But variance 4 is the requirement of a sidewalk on the south side of the property from Pulaski to Newton Street along Reese, which would not granting that variance request would disrupt a hedge that we, based on our records, has been there for 70 plus years. That is really part of the feel, the look, the visibility of the historic home. In addition to that, there's a sidewalk across that one direction road, one-way street that has a sidewalk that's not 15 feet away. That we believe that a redundancy of a sidewalk, the utilization or the utility of that sidewalk is far overshadowed by the disruption of the historical nature of the property. So if you had to pick a variance request to approve, I would certainly vote for number 4 because it would disrupt kind of the nature and the feel of the property. With that, I'll be quiet and I'll turn it over to Sam. Appreciate y'all's consideration for the project and the variance request. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mark. Sam McElworth, Athens resident, on the board for Georgia Beta House Court. Again, nonprofit that we help just look over the property and help mentor and have the fraternity as well. So in addition, my office building is right next door. So I'm at 345 West Hancock, and love being downtown, love that area. Definitely want to do what's right for the community and our property. As far as the variance 1, just want to go into some of the details. I can't point with this. So variance 1. So basically, there's 2 undeveloped lots here. Georgia Beta has acquired these. I think they've owned them for 20 plus years. And right now people kind of hop the curb and park over here. Most of those people are construction workers right now working on projects. What we do want to do is have, egress, ingress from 2 places in the property. And we wanted there's a drop of about 5 to 6 feet from this existing parking lot down to Newton Street. So it's kind of overgrown right now and it drops down about 6 feet. So we do want to build a retaining wall that will fill with dirt in here to extend the parking lot, which would be all on one level. With that, we're trying to add for a total of 56 parking spaces. We have about 40 now. The membership of the fraternity is around 120, so it's about 35 per class. There's some attrition, but we're not changing any of that. We're not adding people to the house or anything like that. It's just really to enhance the property and add better parking. With that, the retaining wall, to maximize the parking, we are asking to extend the retaining wall and the landscape buffer. So variants 1 and 2 are kind of in the same, where the retaining wall will be about 7.5 feet, and it will be within 10 feet of the right of way. And, we're open to enhancing, adding more landscaping, doing whatever features we could do. If we're not granted the variance, we would lose about 2 parking spaces. Obviously not going to kill us, but we feel like it's good utilization and something good to ask for. So that's variances 1 and 2. Love to hear you guys' input and questions, and we can go from there. Variance 3 that Matt, you touched on was the transparency. Just like you said, it's a 1-story building. We are pushing the shack. The topography of the site's pretty difficult, but we are pushing the shack from its existing location back to the corner of the property. The size of the shack is staying the same size. We are just, the one that's there is just needs to be, we looked at renovating, but it needs to be rebuilt and repositioned. With that, the foundation wall on this building along Newton and Reese is, it goes from 5 to 10 feet. So that is pretty much from the road line up, that is what we consider, I guess, the first floor. Obviously, you can't put windows in the first floor. Obviously, we want to abide for any code, above that for the first floor that we're going to be in. And I think we can make those adjustments. We just, want to ask for a variance of the basement level, I would guess. That's really not a basement. Trying to think what else. Something Mark mentioned is just, we want to keep, it's historical house, historical grounds. And that's something that we take a lot of pride in. We, every year, every month, we have meetings to make sure we are taking care of this property. The sidewalks, Mark mentioned along Reese on the front of the property, those are very important to us to keep the hedges and the integrity of the house. Also, we do have on our plans a sidewalk on this stretch from the entrance exit on Reese Street to the corner of Newton and Reese. We do think we can put a sidewalk in there, and that's not an issue. So we do have those on our drawings. There is a historic dry stacked stone wall that we feel like has been there for 70 years. And, it's our intention, we would love to not disrupt that and leave it, especially since this sidewalk is going to pretty much come up to the corner of this house and dead end. So for somebody to get on the sidewalk, they're going to have to jaywalk from across the street onto here. And we just don't feel like it's worth disrupting something that's historical to put a sidewalk there. Also, the topography there is really steep. So again, it will be retaining walls, and it's just going to be difficult from a construction standpoint. With that dry stack rubble wall, it probably needs some, we're not opposed to maybe doing some maintenance for it and kind of making it look kind of like it did 70 years ago. Obviously, we don't want to disrupt it too much, but just a thought there.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, at this time, we'll open it up to public comment. Is there anyone who is here to speak in favor of this project? Is there anyone in the audience who is here to speak in opposition to this project? All right, that concludes public comment and we'll bring it back on in the round.
I'll start with a question about the transparency issue. This may be off the table because I believe this went through the whole HBC process. Is that correct? So this is a highly processed request we're getting right now. But was there any discussion or can there still be any discussion about alternative compliance for that transparency? I'm actually pretty familiar with that building. I worked, I did a lot of volunteer with Great Hospitality when they had their headquarters there. I did a lot of volunteering there. So pretty familiar with it. Answer to that question.
Anything that changes any of the exterior walls, and Amber, correct me if I get this wrong, but anything that changes any of the exterior walls on the property would need to end the COA that was previously approved.
So that's. Yeah.
I think I need some clarification on the sidewalk issue and maybe the staff slide that had the color on it for the 4 variances was helpful. Those pictures would probably be helpful when we're talking about it, but right now, the blue line is what would sort of be required, right? And is the applicant saying that they're okay with sidewalk on the left hand, on Newton and the first piece of Reese? Or I guess the hedge that they're talking about starts on this picture to the right of the driveway. It's that, okay. So I guess that's my question is, can the applicant, is the sidewalk on Newton a problem for the applicant?
Yeah, we'll recognize the applicant to address that question.
There's 2 issues on Reese. You're correct. In the front of the house, kind of in line with the historic house, that's where the historic hedges are that we would, most importantly, not like to disrupt. Where the shack building is, from the entrance exit coming out of the property towards Newton Street, we are okay putting a sidewalk there. We feel like we can do it with the topography. And that's fine. Going up Newton Street, I guess our request is to not put that because of the historic rubble wall that's in place there. And also the topography is a lot steeper in that area. So it's going to be more retaining walls and more disruption. Really, we got to take out the historic wall that's been there for 70 years. And also that sidewalk dead ends because the house at the corner there does not have a sidewalk.
Or does it dead end?
Where the blue line ends up there with the orange, blue, red, it dead ends right there.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Actually, can I ask the applicant to clarify something? You said you believe the rubble stone wall to be 70 years old, but your landscape architect who submitted the historical report, I think said, if I'm remembering the quote right, that it could possibly be over 50 years old, but it sounded like she couldn't even be sure of that. Do you have other information on that?
No, I do have that here. I may have missed. She says the addition of retaining walls may be related to the development of auxiliary buildings on the east side of the property, which appear as early as 1934 in aerial photographs and are noted in written text documenting the property prior to 1936. So I don't think she knew exactly, but she did do her homework and gave a couple of different alternatives from what I could see.
Yeah, I'm quoting from her February 1st letter that's in your submission from Ms. Fischetti, saying.
Yeah, she did say potentially over 50.
Could potentially be over 50 years old.
Yeah, and then farther down in the text, I guess I was looking at farther down the text. That's correct.
Where she says it might or might not be related to the development of those houses the houses were from 1934.
Correct.
All right, thank you. bringing it back behind the rail. Any other discussion?
I'll say, I like this general plan. I would like to approve it. I think we need to figure out some of this variance stuff and it's a really tough site. I'm always in favor of getting as many sidewalks as possible, but yeah, I guess I just want us to maybe get into the nitty gritty of those variances.
Alice?
I mean, I really do think that's the question. The staff gave a, you know, a good reason for them, you know, for denying them. None of them are in line with our, you know, our planning in terms of what we want for this kind of area. So it's kind of either we say that's right, or we say there's so many site-specific issues here that we need to, you know, dig down some more. Personally, I could go with option one, but I'm certainly not opposed, but in any means, do whatever we need to do to get in more detail here.
I'm sorry, to clarify, is option one just following the staff recommendation?
Yeah, but that's, I'm not ready to make a motion.
Okay, I have some thoughts on some of the variances. I guess first of all, on sidewalks, I generally feel as though Athens-Clarke County needs sidewalks. I think this particular block of Reese Street, on the one hand, it does have a sidewalk on the other side. Part of that is at a 45-degree angle because of the strange topography there. It's not really a sidewalk. It's just the sidewalk turns into like a skateboard ramp. And it's not actually usable by pedestrians. And I think, I mean, you know, an alternative would be, I don't know why people need to use Reese Street to get from Pulaski to Newton that often. You know, there's other ways to do it. You know, Athens could consider closing that street and making it a bike and pedestrian street. But barring that, it strikes me that sidewalks are appropriate on this block, maybe more than any other single block in Athens-Clarke County, for the simple reason that there are over 1,000 new bedrooms that got built at that corner of Reese and Newton in the last 2 years. One of those buildings, I think, is fully occupied now. The other is a year behind it and will be fully occupied next year. And we'll have well over 1,000 people living there and using that block to get to downtown Athens. And if you have car traffic and people walking in the middle of the street, there's a public safety issue. So I think our general planning policy of requiring sidewalks when development is and upgrades are happening is a sensible one, particularly where there is a significant need for pedestrian access, which, as I say, that block maybe more than any other has that need. And regarding the sort of concept the applicant has described of a historic hedge, you know, I think that the hedge along Reese Street is a lovely privet hedge. I gather from the historian's report that as individual bushes have died, they've been replaced in kind over time. And I imagine that if the applicant does have to put in a sidewalk there, they'll either move the hedges or they'll put in new privet and it'll look much like it looks. So effectively, the choice on that sidewalk appears to me to be either let them keep the front yard at its existing width or shrink the front yard a little to accommodate a public sidewalk, which our planning documents do strongly favor the latter approach. And the rubble wall, I went by the property a couple of days ago. The rubble wall is a good way to describe it. That's how the applicant described it. And 90% of it appears to be collapsed. There's a couple of 10, 12-foot sections that are still standing. The rest of it is truly stone rubble. And a lot of it seemed to me to be a good 5 feet back from the curb. And so perhaps not incompatible with the addition of sidewalks. So I think on the sidewalk thing, I'm personally not inclined to support a variance. I suppose the applicant would have another option on the hedge front, which would be to, I don't know if this is done or can be done, but would be to put the sidewalk just on the inside of the hedge. Then it's kind of in their yard, but it leaves the existing hedge undisturbed. Regarding the the third variance, the one about building transparency, I actually just have a point of clarification because I asked during the staff report about the bring it back up, about the why we define the ground floor to mean this foundation that doesn't have any windows in it. And they said, well, the ground floor is 10 feet above the street. And so I pulled up the ordinance and I'm not sure that that's accurate, but I wonder if maybe Brad, you could help us understand it. So I'm looking at section 9-10-6 of our zoning ordinance titled Design Standards for CD Zone. And then if you go down to part D, Building Design Standard, and then subpart 4, Transparency. It says a minimum percentage of any wall facing a public street shall have openings accounting for the percentages provided below and use transparent glass in those openings. And for the west end of downtown, it's 30% at the ground floor and 20% for upper levels. But then sub A, right under that, defines transparency at the ground floor level shall be measured from, and it doesn't say from the street, it says from the finished building grade at the street, 10 feet above grade for the entire width of the wall. And so the building at the street is on, I take it, a slab that's a good bit above the street. And if we measure from the building grade at the street, then I don't think then I don't think we need to give them a variance. It's just the only floor of the building is the ground floor. It just happens to be 10 feet up from the street. But I don't deal with his ordinance every day in the way that y'all do, Brad. So I wonder if you can clarify if I'm reading that wrong.
Finished building grade at the street. I mean, this is one of those that you just don't see very often in downtown because of its nature.
Right.
I think we potentially, not to further complicate it, but if we don't call that wall part of the building, then it's basically a retaining wall that the building is sitting on top of. And then we've got potentially an issue with retaining wall heights and distances from the right of way like we dealt with behind us with the multifamily project and that ratio of height to setback that may create a need for something else.
Do we know from the site plan how far that existing foundation wall on the plan is from the curb? Is it within the 10-foot setback? That would, I think it's 10 feet. Am I wrong about that? And the applicant's raising his hand. So if he has an answer to that question, we'll recognize.
Yeah, we're 8 feet. 8 feet.
Okay, so it's 8 foot back. So they need a variance for retaining wall setback.
Yeah, I do think if you're looking for a way to provide relief with it, as was mentioned during the agenda review, I think you could grant a variance to allow them to measure the ground floor of that building at the finished floor elevation and then be required to meet 30% from that point for a height of 10 feet across in its entirety.
Okay.
It would basically be it would be modifying the way that where we would begin measuring based on topography.
Okay.
Sounds like just what they want.
And then they would have to go, did I understand earlier, Bruce, they'd have to go back through HPC to change their fenestration on that, since they've been approved for what's going on, but it doesn't meet the transparency. Okay. So yeah, that might be my inclination on that. I comment on one of the other variances, but I'll just open it up to Sarah and then Joey, and you can come back.
Yeah, as far as variance 3, and variance 4, I've heard, I agree that we should have sidewalks, we shouldn't grant that variance. The variance should be granted with the fenestration though. So where's that? So if I'm standing next to this building on the street or on the sidewalk, and I look towards the building, I'm going to be staring at a wall, right? Unless I am more than 10 feet tall. In which case, I think we should just grant the variance entirely and not worry about the CD level fenestration requirements, because like the entire point of that is for the experience from the street, and it's gonna be a wall, no matter what. No, the only difference is gonna be on the inside of the house. I think we should just grant and spare them having to, go back through HPC and such.
Fair enough. Joey?
I'm gonna go a different direction with the sidewalks because I think that's the variance that needs to be granted. The hedges there, I don't see a reason with that being a one-way street. And I guess I have a question. It's a public sidewalk. Who maintains the sidewalk? The city? That's correct. So if we have a unsafe sidewalk on the other side of the road, are we failing to correct that sidewalk? As city. So I see a one-way street and we have approved multiple developments in the back. And I love your idea. And the city, the mayor and commission, I hope they're listening to this, needs to look at that position of street and potentially close it off and make it pedestrian friendly to walk through, and incorporate. What we said, improving these developments in the back is let's extend downtown. We want to bring downtown and make all that part of downtown. And then we're going to look narrow sidewalks and put a part of hedges that's been there for longer than any of us have probably lived in Athens, for the majority. And to add another sidewalk when there's a sidewalk clearly there. And the street truly needs to be looked at with the development going there. So I really think that is a variance that we should consider, because adding that little bit of sidewalk, I mean, it's not, you're not really adding that much when we've even failed to maintain this side as a city. So I hope that we really look at that. And I do hope that the commission will rethink those that want to get rid of the hedges and put the sidewalk there. I think that that needs to be something that we fix this sidewalk and look at the street, have the mayor and commission look at the street and potentially close the street if they feel that that many pedestrians are going through. It is that big of an issue that we're causing that much of a traffic jam or that much of a hazard of people walking, that we look at that. So I look at that. I agree with variance C, that we should grant that there as well. Variances A and B, I mean, I can go either way on those. As the applicant said, if we don't grant A and B, they're losing only 2 spaces. It's only going to shift them over a little bit. So I'm not so much tied to either one of those, but I really think C and D should be looked at and should be granted.
Sarah?
Just in response, not the sidewalks. I don't think it's realistic to expect that street to become fully pedestrianized. That's just, I don't think that's something that's ever gonna happen. Yeah.
College Avenue did.
And, like Joey just said, we talked about extending downtown. Downtown streets have sidewalks on both sides. Any downtown you go to, it's sidewalks on both sides, no matter if it's a one-way street for cars. That's what city streets are like, and it's what we should have our streets be like.
Kristen?
So yeah, I agree, we need to have the sidewalks go all the way around. The one variance that I am okay with is the fenestration one, just because it just seems like a hornet's nest no matter what. So I'm happy to see that whole corner improved, because with all of the changes on the other side of Newton Street, we need some more sidewalks around here. It's already a tiny street as it is. So yeah, that's where I'll leave it. Or I'll make a motion.
I'll just say one more thing. I look at these sidewalks, and this is a very unpopular statement, but about some of our bike paths around Athens that I ride down Prince Avenue, and I've been going down Prince Avenue since they've been built, and I can know that I've seen less than 5 bikes on the bike paths. And I hope that increases, and I pray that increases with extending bike paths. But until I can see the need, I don't see the need to remove vegetation when we have people that advocate for green space and planting. We have people that want us to add vegetation. We won't take it up.
Just one more comment. I'm on Prince a lot and I hope to see the bike lanes used more, but it's there are times of day where you see me. But yeah.
I'm just there.
The only other thing I say, and this will be an unpopular view as well. We're talking about a privet hedge here. I have not once but twice been knocked off my bicycle coming down Millage Avenue. By somebody not seeing me around those privet hedges. That's just irrelevant, but if this were, some, flowering jasmine, I don't know, but I respect the age of it and they obviously take extremely good care of it. Privet is pretty, but it is a desirable piece of green. So I am with the sidewalk. I am also very happy to go with the fenestration variance.
Yeah, I guess I'll just comment that I'm fine with the fenestration variance that's been discussed. I think Sarah Gehring made a good point on that. I don't personally think of a privet hedge as offering green space. I think it's really the question here is just, do we go with our law that requires public space at the curb, 5 feet of sidewalk, and scoot I'm sure they'll put the privet hedge back in 5 feet over, or not, we're not going to lose the privet hedge, or they're not going to be forced to lose it. They can transplant it or plant new privet and they can still have a privet hedge if that's what they want. It's just a question of trading 5 feet of their front yard for 5 feet of sidewalk, which is what our law requires. And I don't see a compelling case to grant a variance to our existing legal requirement that they put in a sidewalk there. But I'm totally fine with what people are saying about variance number 3, the ground floor transparency one. I guess just a quick comment on the first variance about the 10-foot landscape buffer. If I understood the applicant right, they're saying it would be a 7.5 foot retaining wall instead of 3 feet, which is what our ordinance allows. And my inclination is, that feels too high for a downtown street. And 7.5 foot retaining wall within the 10-foot setback from the sidewalk strikes me as awfully high. And if the only cost to saying no to that variance is 2 fewer parking spots, I understand the applicant wants more parking spots, but I'd rather have kind of a more human scale street frontage there. And so I'm not inclined to support that variance, although I don't feel as bad as I just left the sidewalk.
Can we put the variances back on the screen?
So any further discussion, or does anyone want to make a motion?
I just get a little clarification about, I think I'm a little confused about just like looking at the property from Newton Street. The retaining wall in front of the shack will be how tall? And how setback?
That's a foundation of the building,
Okay.
as it was described, not a separate retaining wall. The retaining wall that's in variance 1 is by the parking spot further.
Okay. And that the applicant has requested that to be how tall?
7.5 feet, I believe.
And our code says 3.5,
3 feet.
3 feet max.
Yeah, can the applicant clarify if I am correct that it's 7.5?
Well, it's technically, I guess, a foundation.
The podium just for the video.
So it's a foundation wall, so it's part of the foundation of the structure. So it does slope too. So the footing underneath the wall will step down as the grade steps down. The elevation, the finished floor elevation of the new building is within 3 inches of the same elevation of the building that's there. It's just when you move it back toward the corner of the property, the grades goes down, so you got to have the wall to sit on. But yeah, so it'll go from 3 to, I guess, 7 feet.
And how far set back is that foundational wall from the right of way?
I think the closest, I believe, the closest from the right way is like 8 feet on one side, and then it's farther back on the Newton Street. We did, during the initial plan reviews, we had the site triangle, so we pushed everything back toward the historic house. And so it is away from the street, so you have the site triangle.
Thank you.
I'd like to make if I can get this right, I'd like to make a motion for approval, that includes variance 3, the variance is back up. That includes variance 3.
Approval of variance 3, but not the others, and with the staff conditions as specified in the staff report.
Correct. Yes, thank you.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Kristen and second by Alice. Discussion.
I've got, could staff clarify for us, condition B, the combination plat requirement? Can you all tell me why you want to see that happen? Why is that ideal?
I mean, there are some buffer requirements for parking, so having a lot line go straight through a parking lot would cause trouble. Having a whole entire project on one parcel helps out for other purposes. Scrolling down the road if things begin to change. It's, yeah, a common practice.
I sort of understand it for the 3 little ones. I don't as well understand it with the big, especially because the larger of those just the larger lot has some historic, is landmark, right? Like I'm wondering how by combining all of these parcels, does that then make the owners, does that put everything on the property under that same protection? Just that structure?
Just the boundaries of the designation.
Okay,
So the lot lines can change. but
which
the
comply
designation
with the
stay
boundaries
same.
of that bigger lot
Right.
now. And so those boundaries stay the same even if all those parcels are turned into one?
That's right.
Okay, that's what I was wanting to know. Okay.
Any further discussion of the motion? All right, then we have a vote.
Motion to approve with the recommended staff conditions and granting of variance number 3. Kinman,
Yes.
Beresford,
Yes.
Gary,
Yes.
Morales,
Yes.
Pass.
Yeah.
Sanders.
Tucker. Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Oh.
The other side.
Yeah.
Everybody uses Bell Southeast. They can easily turn left and go out. And
I just had.
All right, let the record reflect that Commissioner Jams has rejoined us, and new business section. Item number 1, 1508 US Highway 29 North, item number zone -2023-12-2457, and we'll begin with the staff report.
Planning Commission. I'm here to present the rezone request for Highway 1508 US Highway 29 North, zone case 2023-12-2457. There we go. Good. So the request is to rezone the parcel from commercial rural to commercial general. This will require a change in the future land use from rural to general business. So the purpose of the request is to expand the current business, which is Harbin Lumber, an existing lumber yard. So the way we've kind of come to this rezone request is that their current use, construction materials sales, is a legal non-conforming use. So it can't be, the only way to expand upon that use is with the rezone. Also, they're at 34% of their lot coverage. CR, which again, it's not a permitted use. CR is maxed out at 35. So they're kind of up against two walls. Rezone request is for that. Given a little bit of history, Harbin Lumber's been there almost 40 years. In 2018, they took their original 5-acre tract and combined it with a 13-acre tract, had a rezone from AR to to CR. And they've had 2 variance requests in that time, both of them involving the sidewalk. And they had to come in 2 pieces when they added those 2 parcels together. The original rezone was, or the original variance request was just for that original 5 acres portion. So both of those were approved. And so again, we've had conversations with them, and this originally came in as a variance request. And again, due to the legal nonconformity, it could not expand upon its use. And so the rezone request is what they are reaching out for. Also, as we'll see at the end, there's a recommendation, a condition recommended, and the applicant actually pointed out that they would be perfectly fine with this and suggested that uses were limited to this rezone. So we'll get through that. So here you see the aerial photo. The site itself. Right. So the site itself slopes to the back of the parcel where you see on that northeastern corner, there is a creek back there, state waters. To the north of the parcel on Highway 29, there's 2 similar use businesses, trucking business, and to the south, agriculturally zoned parcel, which is a church, and then basically the entire east side of that is agricultural zoned. Very sparse housing and agricultural parcels. Across the road is the DMV and State Patrol Office, which is zone government. And over to the west, you notice the 2 large manufactured home sites, which is Pinewood Estates and Country Club Estate, or Country Corners. Yep. So again, here's the future land use. So this request will require going from rural to general business. And the spirit of the rural land use is low density. Where commercial is there, it's also low impact is what it calls for. So moving to general business is generally intended for commercial areas that serve the variety of needs of the area. Also, small and large scale retail and services that are auto-centered, and specifically calls out US Highway 29 as one of those, as well as Lexington Road and Highway. Here we'll move on to the zoning map. You'll again see that's kind of the beginning of commercial corridor on the northern portion to the county line. It's CR all the way up to the county line. To the south, right at about a half a mile, is the northern portion of the commercial general section of the US 29 hub, I would say, where towards which extends south down to the intersection of 78 or 72 and US 29 by the Kroger. Here, the applicant has submitted a concept site plan, and you can see they've shown the extent of the current impervious. And they've just showed basically this is the area they intend to make future expansions upon. Again, the site, if you look towards the eastern side, you'll see that there's steep slopes that are going to limit or basically eliminate the possibility for development in that back portion. They have infiltration trenches along that eastern side. You see stormwater detention facilities. Their proposed expansions are for just expanding the business use. There's currently sewer nearby, but not on this site, which is one of the things that kind of caused it to remain CR for this portion. They've said that their expansion plans would have no need for sewer, and the septic system they have now is capable of meeting those needs. So moving on to staff recommendations. Staff feels that it's compatible with the 2023 comp plan. One of the things we call out is utilize best practices for the traction and again, Harbin Lumber has been there for 40 years and they're looking to expand and continue to expand their operations, which actually means they're have a successful business going on. We believe there's partial compatibility with the future land use map and the zoning map. General business fits the location and the business of the current use. And we feel like with the condition that we're recommending, if you choose approval, that meets the spirit of the rural, like retains the lower impact of commercial ability. So the condition we're recommending is that in addition to the current use, again, is construction material sales, which is not permitted currently, that will be added to this condition. And until such time that sewer becomes available, again, at that point, possibly removing this condition would mean that it could allow for higher impact uses when sewer is available for that parcel. We're saying that additional uses should be limited to those uses only that are permitted in both commercial rural and commercial general zones. And the uses allowed in those zones would be, with any limitations, shall have to meet the more restrictive. Now, if you have a permitted use in both commercial general and commercial rural, if, in commercial rural, it has a limitation of 10,000 square feet, 2,500 square feet, whatever it is, it would default to that lower impact. So, and concludes the staff report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rauber. At this time, we'll hear from the applicant.
Good evening. My name is Ben Prue with SPG Planners and Engineers. We are locally based out of Watkinsville, and our address is 1725 Electric Avenue, Suite 320 in Watkinsville. So we're representing the applicant, which is Wesley Harbin. He's not only the owner of the property, but also the business owner. We feel this is a pretty straightforward request, so we won't take the full time to address it, but just do want to note that this rezone action will help basically a local business that's been in the area for a really long time to be able to expand and avoid relocating outside of Athens-Clarke County. One other thing just wanted to note was we really feel like this rezone change will help just bring it more into accordance with the type of site constraints and requirements that is applicable to a business of this type. So ultimately, those being, as mentioned, the landscape area, the lot coverage requirements. And as mentioned, help bring this into compliance with its underlying zoning. So regarding the staff report, we appreciate the long back and forth coordination on this. As mentioned, we pursued various routes to help the business owner expand their operations. So we're appreciative of ACC planning and have no concerns with the proposed condition. So happy to answer any questions that may come up, but appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Prue. This time we'll open it up to members of the public. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak in favor of this proposal? And is there anyone here wishing to speak in opposition? Seeing none, we'll bring it back behind the rail.
You can do my thing. I would like to make a approval with staff conditions. Make a motion to approve with staff conditions.
Second. Motion by Alice to approve with staff condition and second by Joey. Any discussion of that motion?
It's the future land use. There's two votes on this one.
Right.
I vote to approve.
Okay, so clarified. The motion is the motion to approve the change to the future land use map as specified. Staff report, seconded by Joey. Any discussion of that?
Inman,
Yes.
Beresford,
Yes.
Gary,
Yes.
Rawls,
Yes.
Pass,
Yes.
Sam's,
Yes.
Sanders,
Yes.
Tucker.
Yes.
Motion to approve the future land use change passes unanimously.
Now I will follow my motion to approve the request with staff recommendation.
Okay, so the motion is to approve the rezoning staff conditions. Motion by Alice, second by Joey. Any discussion of that?
I do have a question.
Oh, sorry.
There was something about the commercial general use versus commercial rural and not exceeding those standards. How is that controlled?
At the staff level, we would kind of hear their request for the various use. Whichever one has the most restrictive limitation on it in the code presently, we would follow those standards. The way that condition is worded now, that's how we would handle it. So if there was a minimum square footage allowed for use in CR that was maybe more restrictive than CG, we would follow the CR's restriction.
Okay. Gotcha.
And just to be clear, that applies to uses, but not parameters like conserved canopy. and
Correct.
things like that, right? That more restrictive use restrictions in the CR code.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Any further? All right, Stephen?
Anybody changing their votes from the last time? Motion passes unanimously.
Maybe we should do it.
Let's do it by show of hands. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, motion passes unanimously.
I like to watch Lita sweat a little bit.
Don't mess with our procedure. There's other issues, and we'll move under new business. NO Henderson Extension. Item number SUP -2024 -03 -0452. We'll begin with staff.
All right, good evening, everyone. For our audience, my name is Stephen, and I am presenting the staff report on the special use request for what is classified in our use chart as a halfway house. The applicant has labeled it a women's sober living facility. The specific request is a special use in an RM2 zone. The proposal is for residents for 5 to 10 women who are recovering from substance abuse. The proposed structure that you see in your packets was approved as a single-family house with a residential driveway back in January. It would need additional review to comply with code requirements that are triggered by being a halfway house, mostly thinking life safety, potentially sprinkler requirements, access, things that would not be required for a single-family house, but would be required for a more intensive use of the structure. However, the architecture, the scale, the site plan, that's going to be the same as what was approved back in January, as it's going to be shown in your plans. There was and this is a little bit of bureaucratic record keeping, but there was a condition limiting driveway access on this property, or there is a condition limiting driveway access on this property. It was intended to keep any multifamily traffic off of Henderson Extension. This property has never been developed, but it is zoned for multifamily. Staff has determined that that condition only applies for multifamily, and this use is not multifamily, so they can have their driveway. This is an aerial of the site. You can see the site itself completely wooded. We have Baxter Street running along the bottom here. We have the H.T. Edwards Building and other Clarke County School District campus buildings over here on the top. We have Rock Springs, the housing development over here and other parts of that neighborhood on the left. Property itself, completely wooded. It's got a creek running through the middle of it with a 75-foot local buffer on either side. So if you're wondering, this seems like a very small building for a very small, very large lot. It's because most of that lot can't be touched. So that's why it is sat for so long. The proposed construction would stay out of those zones and comply with all local regulations. The future land use is mixed density residential. That doesn't have to change. So that stays the same. And then this is it's an RM2 zoned property. The special use is compatible with RM2 as long as it meets the special use test. And we've outlined that in the staff report that staff does believe that this request passes the special use test. And you can see the details of our thought on that in your staff report. This is the site plan. It's blown up here on the left, but this is the site at large, and you can see a very small building on a relatively large lot. That's because you've got a creek coming basically through here with 75 feet on either side. You've got a very small developable area right around here. So this is the footprint of the proposed house with the driveway, and that would become binding. This is the architecture. Again, it would also become binding. There are certain pieces, mostly internal to the structure, that would have to change potentially to comply with like safety requirements, potential sprinkler system, maybe some access, some other things. But the overall building shell and architecture is going to stay the same, be binding, and that fits in with the neighborhood character as a single family type of structure. Staff report, in staff's opinion, we deem this to be compatible with our 2023 comprehensive plan. It increases access to affordable housing, in this case, especially for a specific citizenry that faces an elevated risk of homelessness. The request is compatible with our future land use map, our zoning ordinance. In staff's opinion, it satisfies the special use test. When halfway houses have come before staff in the past, we've heard concerns about crime, property values, those sorts of things. We've looked into that. We did not find conclusive local evidence to validate or dispel these concerns. We would note that a lot of times with these kinds of facilities, the quality is more dependent on the skill and capability of the operator than the use itself. We can confirm, though, that members of the Athens community have benefited from staying in these kinds of facilities. And finally, we'll close with saying that this meets the ACC Gov strategic plan adopted by the mayor and commission, that goal of quality, stable, affordable housing for all, specifically goal area 4D, which is to prevent and reduce homelessness by enabling supportive housing options that meet a variety of needs. So when you take all of this into account, staff is recommending approval of the request. That concludes the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Jacquez. We will now hear from the applicant.
Hi, I'm not good at this. This is very different from what I do. My name is Jada Fiorentino. I've met some of you guys before. And I'm a person in long-term recovery. What that means to me is I get to show up and be a part of my life, and I get to be somebody that people can count on and trust again. And my life has completely changed since I've turned it over. And one of the benefits that I get out of all this is helping other women achieve what I've achieved, which is long-term sobriety, a stable member of society, and that kind of thing. I know you guys have heard our stories, and they're phenomenal. They're tear-jerking. What I am passionate about, obviously, is having a place for us to recover. We struggle with that because we're addicts and alcoholics. So now we have to get a special use, and it's hard. We really we don't really know how to navigate this real well. So forgive me if I'm rusty, but I do want to bring to the table some of the things that we've done on our end. I know, Stephen said it was, you were more concerned with the qualifications and what we were doing and how we were running things. I did print off, copies of policies and procedures for everybody. I did send an electronic version as well, if you want to review that. I've gotten my CARE CPS AD. I'm also, trained in, science of addiction and recovery. I'm doing MRT training, and that starts next week. And the members of my staff are doing the same. So not only do we have that, we also have phases of our program. So I just, before I get into all that, I'm so nervous, sorry. Is that we're not just pulling women off the street. These women the women that come to me have been to treatment. So they're ready to recover. They're ready to recover and ready to work a program. So it's not difficult. I'm not chasing them down the road because they're using drugs and alcohol. We're just like any other neighbor in any other neighborhood. So that's what we want to use the facility for. We now have transportation for residents to meetings, work, and community service activities. We created aftercare program. I have a couple of the graduates here, they live in their own homes that we oversee. They're required to go to 12-step meetings. We've also been working closely with the Georgia Association for Recovery Residences. And we've been attending their monthly. We cannot get certified yet because we are not zoned properly. So we are waiting for somebody to say, hey, you guys can stay. I've also started a 501c3 to help support the women while they're in this program, called Women's Recovery Resources. That'll help. That'll also help support coming from on the street to getting your own place, to getting your kids back, to all the things we do as productive members of society, being our resumes and getting good jobs and just turning lives around. So, yeah. So do I pass out the policies and procedures? So I go ahead and do that. Okay. So I wanted to give you guys an idea. We've worked really hard on this stuff. It is, and we're finding it's working. We've got in the community, like I said, getting their kids back, working jobs, staying clean and sober and living lives that are, not being arrested and doing what normal people do every day. So, we just need somewhere to go. We need a house that we can call home and that we can provide that step up to get the things that we need, to get our own place, to get involved in life. And I think that's it. I'll let you guys read over this stuff, and if you have any questions, let me know. That's great.
Thank you, Ms. Fiorentini. Is there any member of the public here wishing to speak in favor of?
My name is Ashley Davis. I'm a person in long-term recovery. When I was first asked to come speak about my recovery today, I thought, why would she pick me? But I know why she would pick me. When I got to New Life House, Jada saw something in me that I couldn't yet see in myself. She knew I was ready to cover. I just wasn't sure what that looked like yet. Jada and the New Life House have given me things I never knew I needed. Before I got here, I thought my life was over. I thought I wasn't worthy of love. I thought I would be labeled for the rest of my life. I was defeated. Jada and her team and my sisters at the New Life House have pushed me to get to where I am today. Before New Life House, I was just another addict with a bad habit. They have given me so many tools and resources that I needed to flourish with, and I have been able to flourish. I've gained back everything that I once lost. I have my children back. I have my own home. I'm accountable and I'm trustworthy and I'm dependable. Today, I'm able to carry myself with a purpose, and today I'm able to give back what Jada and New Life House have given me. Today, I know what service work is, and I know I'm able to give that to my newest sisters at New Life House. New Life House has made my heart hungry because I want what they have, and that's a lot of love, a lot of drive, a lot of support, and recovery. There are no words that could ever express the gratitude I have for this recovery home and the gratitude that my family has for this recovery home. I've been in many different recovery homes, and New Life House have by far surpassed my expectations and my wildest imaginations. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Is there any other member of the public wishing to speak in favor of this proposal?
Good evening. My name is Sunshine McCoy. I'm also a person in long-term recovery. I'm a case manager and facilitator at New Life House. I just want to let you know, I've got credentials as a CARES, a certified addiction recovery empowerment specialist. I'm a certified peer specialist in addictive diseases, mental health. Also, the forensic peer mentor, which allows me to work in any kind of residential home, reentry programs. I work with accountability courts, diversion centers, and correctional institutions. We have the options of, these are the groups and the classes that we have to offer that I am certified for, which is moral recognition therapy, dialectical behavior therapy, matrix, whole health action management, wellness recovery action plan, and trauma informed care ×2. And when I say ×2, one is breaking the chains of trauma and the other one is battling shadows. We offer the NA, the AA, All Recovery, Celebrate Recovery, any kind of support groups our ladies choose to go to, we will support. I'm all of this is a direct result of me completing program in Athens-Clarke County. Today I stand here as a productive member of society instead of a menace. I've been able to work and be employable and pay taxes and be a daughter and be a friend and be a good human being. And like I said, it's all directly a result of a program such as New Life House. I think we need as many as we can for women and men, actually. But right now, focusing on the women, we need to get them off the streets, get them back with their kids, get their families back together. But thank you for your time and consideration.
Is there any other member of the public wishing to speak in favor of this proposal?
Hey, good evening. My name is Terry Sissel, and I currently live in Athens. I'm also a person in long-term recovery. I am a current graduate of New Life House of Hope, and I'm here today to strongly advocate for our new facility at 1005 Henderson Extension. One of the things that I stand for is that I feel there's an extremely compelling need for additional affordable recovery residences in Athens. I am also a product of multiple recovery residences. And when I saw the agenda for today and I saw that the statement was made about the variation in the facility quality had to do with the managers of those operations. And I can speak very strongly for the staff and the commitment of the staff at New Life House and for what they stand for. And what that means to me is when you look at these policies and procedures and you look at the phases that have been created for the women coming into this program, what you see is that this program does operate from a place of love, but it also operates with structure and discipline and a sense of organization for the women that allows them to not only flourish, but while they're growing, they are abiding by a set of rules and guidelines that are imperative for them as they begin to develop structure and life skills so that they can move forward and absolutely be productive members of society. And also very important as we grow as a team at New Life House of Hope, and my wish is to become a team member and a staff member at New Life, is to encourage us to also reach out and foster recovery in the community and give back to the community that's given so much support to us. And that's through service work in the community, not only with other women in recovery, but for the homeless and other areas where we can be of service. And so I feel very strongly that in addition to accessibility to public transportation, and in our other houses, we continue to respect our neighbors, as well as being law-abiding citizens and enforcing local laws. I think that this is a great addition for the team at New Life House of Hope, and I hope that you'll give us all strong consideration. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Sisson. Is there any other member of the public here to speak in favor of this?
My name is Christy and I'm an active member of New Life House. I'm a resident of Clarke County and as a result of my participation in this recovery home. I couldn't have achieved all the things I have if not for a program like this. I think there should be more programs to show people in addiction the different life possible after what drugs ruined the lives we led. I've held my job for almost 2 years, paid my way in life, and also helped newer residents in the program. I have a strong desire to be a normal resident of the county. I know the drug epidemic in the county is far greater than anyone can imagine, so the need for programs like this grows every day. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there any other member of the public here to speak in favor of the proposal?
Hey, my name is Kristen Carlin, and I'm also a person in long-term recovery. And what that looks like for me today is giving back to anyone struggling with addiction. I know that I wouldn't be where I'm at in life today had I not went through a program, a recovery residence here in Athens, Georgia. It taught me accountability, structure, respect, and just getting back on my feet, which, well, not back on my feet, but getting on my feet. It's something I never knew. And through all that, I become somebody that gets to turn around and help others that were in the same position I was in. And working in this field, I know the strong need we need for recovery residences for women and men. I mean, I get at least 5 to 10 calls a week of people needing somewhere to go, wanting a bed, and there not being anywhere for them to go because everywhere is full or it's not affordable. And I just think that the more we have, the better we are, because the disease of addiction is hitting Athens-Clarke County hard, and we want to be part of the solution and not the problem. And I thank y'all for having us here today. Thank you. Kristen.
Is there any other member of the public who can speak in favor of this proposal?
I'm Lindsay Jones. I'm a person in long-term recovery and I'm a resident of Athens-Clarke County. You know, what that means to me is that today my life has purpose. Today I get to give back what was so freely given to me. And I get to see these women, their lives change and they become productive members of society. And I'm that also because of New Life House. I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for that program. And I am extremely grateful. And I know that the addiction problem is not getting any smaller. It's not going to go away. So I think that we need more places like this so that, these women can have somewhere to go and the men too. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Is there any other member of the public here to speak in favor of this?
Good afternoon, Sheets, Alvin Sheets. I have property not far from this facility. And now that I've heard that it's a halfway house for God's most precious creation and gift to man, I will stand in support of the halfway house as long as it's clearly understood that this is going to be a halfway house for women. I had some concerns when I first saw halfway house. I'm thinking, man, okay, that could be problematic. And there still may be a few problems, but however, I will stand in support of a women's halfway house. We need some men halfway house, but that's a whole different ballgame. That's not the discussion tonight. With that being said, I wish you the best. This is National Prayer Day. Remember to pray for these women that are in recovery. Peace be with you.
Thank you, Mr. Sheets. Is there any other member of the public here to speak in favor of this proposal? All right, is there any member of the public here to speak in opposition to this proposal? Seeing none, we'll take it behind the rail.
I'm a short time here, guys, so when you see my name on all these emotions, just, thank you for indulging me. I'll make one comment before I make a motion to approve this. This is obviously a zoning decision. Stephen did make a really important comment, and I think that the people in the audience tonight addressed that extremely satisfactorily. I'm very impressed with your credentials we heard about tonight. And one other comment is that the underlying zoning here Could there be anything worse in this neighborhood? Could there be anything more productive than what's being proposed right now? So it's a no-brainer. I make a motion to approve.
Second. Motion by Alice, second by Joey. Further discussion, Kristen?
One comment I want to make related to the zoning. I didn't fully realize until I listened to Matt Pulver's podcast about, it's called Athcast, and I recommend everybody listen to it. He did a podcast, two-part podcast about the Peach Street proposal. And I admit, I didn't fully realize that you cannot have a halfway house in single-family zones. You can only have it in multifamily zones. And I apologize, I didn't fully gather that. And I think I was so blown away and angered by the ridiculous restrictiveness of our single-family zoning in that case, because I personally know of two under-the-radar halfway houses operating in a single-family neighborhood, and it is completely fine. And if anybody has a problem with it, like, come talk to me about it, because the fact that we are restricting the ability for these houses to, for these women to live in a residential neighborhood, like, it just blows my mind. So I hope that as we go through our future land use and look at our zoning, we look at ridiculous restrictions like this and make some changes, because I'm appalled by it. So that's all I have to say.
Any other discussion? Well, let me just say thank you to the members of the public. We always appreciate public comment and appreciate all of your discussion of the organization, which is helpful. So with that, let's have a.
I just want to make one comment. The first time you all presented, I know that there were comments from community members about the noise and about traffic. But I do appreciate you doing your due diligence and putting together policies so that your residents have a go by. And also I'm looking at the application for special use, and it says that you have a 10 p.m. curfew for the house. So I think just having those regulations in place are really helpful. And it's good for us to understand what you're trying to do to preserve your organization. So thank you for that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Stephen, do you want to call the roll?
Motion to approve. Kinder.
Yes.
Beresford. Garrett.
Yes.
Robbins.
Yes.
Pass. Yes. Sams.
Yes.
Sanders.
Yes.
Tucker. Yes. Motion passes unanimously.
Let's see if the applicant updates for your next meeting. I don't need to keep this. Do you
No,
want?
I want you to have them.
Okay, great.
Yeah, it's really well designed. I actually teach it course, and I'm like, I might just show this to some of my students. Clarity?
Yeah.
Get that? Yeah, I'll do.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Great, that brings us to item 3. Under new business, 3029 Atlanta Highway. Item number SUP 2024-3-0453. Staff report.
Right. Good evening, planning commissioners. So we've got special use permit 2024-03-0453 at 3029 Atlanta Highway. Click there for a minute. Thank you, sir. So they're requesting a special use for ground floor residential in a commercial zone. They are also requesting 2 variances with the special use. The variances are to waive the requirement for the construction of a public plaza in a CG zone for development over 60,000 square feet. And additionally, to waive the requirement for multifamily dwellings that generate more than 250 vehicle trips per day to have at least 2 driveway access points. So we're out here on Atlanta Highway, just a little bit west of the Epps Bridge interchange there. We are just across the street from Hayward Allen Parkway. Let's see, right here is the signalized intersection. In this portion of Atlanta Highway, we have a few car dealerships. We have the Target and associated commercial development there around the Target. To the rear of this property, we have some multifamily property that is all accessed off of Epps Bridge Road. And Additionally, we have a little bit of multifamily up behind here that you'll see in our next case after this. So we have CG zoning on the property. You can see the CG zoning there for all the parcels that front along Atlanta Highway. You then see the two RM properties to the rear that come off of Epps Bridge Parkway. Then you see a little bit of single family that I believe actually comes off of Timothy down there, the yellow portion. So in terms of future land use, general business is the current future land use for the property and would be maintained with this request. You can see some of that mixed density residential there again to the rear. The applicant has submitted a site plan here showing the building pulled up to Atlanta Highway as much as possible. You can see a lot of squiggly lines in the back there. This site is very heavy on topography. I believe there's over 70 feet of fall from the back of this property to the front of it. In fact, this property would actually sit up a little bit from Atlanta Highway. If you've all been out there, you might have noticed the driveway that's existing here at the signalized intersection that serves the office complex that's currently right over here on the parcel to the east. They would have surface parking in the rear. This would be a split building. So you would see one level of the building there on the front. And then as you come in the driveway, you'd be coming uphill. And then you would actually be accessing the second level of the building where you'd be walking in here from the surface parking lot. The applicant has also submitted a tree management plan showing demonstrating compliance with our standards. As you can see here, there is the access off of Atlanta Highway requires some deceleration. There's limitations in terms of what they could do to get into the property with a second entrance. There's also a median across Atlanta Highway at this point. So those are some of the reasons why staff is okay with this. The applicant has volunteered that this is to be age restricted for older folks. That is not a requirement that we can mandate through the zoning code, but the use of the property as such would also limit trips a little bit. They have some access to some daily needs out here, some grocery stores, some shopping. But we also see this portion of Atlanta Highway to not be overly pedestrian friendly, and also the plaza recommendation, just so I can address that variance request that they have. Removing the ground floor commercial, which is what the SUP is all about, removes that reason for them to then also have that plaza space. Additionally, the topography, you can see up in this corner, there's 10, 12 feet of fall right there with those 5 or 6. So here's a an image looking into the site. You can see it going uphill. You all may have noticed that billboard while you're out there visiting the site. Most of it would actually be over in this section of the site right here. Here is a rendering of the building from the Atlanta Highway side. So staff finds this to be compatible with the 2023 comprehensive plan. That comp plan asks for infill and redevelopment be prioritized over greenfield expansion. This site is vacant currently, but it would be one of those missing teeth in the jack-o'-lantern along Atlanta Highway there in terms of infill. So compatible with the future land use map and the zoning map, meets the specific conditions that are required for a special use. And then, as mentioned before, we're near some daily needs, but between where we're suggesting commercial nodes a little bit to the west and a little bit to the east on Atlanta Highway, making this proposal context responsive in terms of the plaza and the access request. So again, here are the two variance requests from the applicant. Staff supports both of those, and additionally, staff is recommending approval of the special use permit. That will conclude the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This time we will hear from the applicant.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for your time. My name is John Maddox with Blue Ridge Atlantic Development. We're the developer of the site. We're developing the apartment community in partnership with the Athens Housing Authority. It is a 68-unit affordable housing development targeting residents who are 55 years or older, earning between 30% and 70% of the area median income. So this is a true mixed income community. Yeah, as mentioned, it's 55 plus. The topography of the site, it is very difficult. This site has sat undeveloped for a long time, largely due to that. A lot of commercial proposals have been suggested for this site, but haven't been able to make it work. Part of the reason we selected senior, less traffic intensive, less parking requirement. So we're able to retain more of the existing site without altering it to meet the parking minimums. There is a bus stop nearby a little bit to the west. We will have sidewalk along our site. We'd certainly be open to moving the bus stop to in front of our development if that's possible to make that easier. I think that we're not quite there, but this is our first development in Athens. We're very excited about the opportunity, excited about the partnership with the Housing Authority. And I just want to say, our goal in this development and all of our developments is for this to be completely indistinguishable from a market rate development. As long-term owners, that's very important to us. It's very important that, regardless of your income level, you have a quality place to live. So we expect that this would be in line with market rate developments that have been seen throughout Athens. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Maddox. Is there any member of the public here to speak in favor of this?
Hi, Grant Whitworth. I live at 760 Meg Street. I just wanted to reiterate the fact that this is an incredibly challenging property. We've worked on it for 20 years. And I'll say going through all the deals and reasons why, but this is a great use. It fills a need for the community. We reached out to all local business owners in the area and have no real opposition. And anyway. Thank you for your support.
Thank you, Mr. Whitworth. Is there any other member of the public here wishing to speak in favor of this proposal? Is there any member of the public here wishing to speak in opposition? Right, being none, we will move that on the rail. Alice.
I am not going to make the motion this time. But I did want to make one comment, which is that I'm starting to feel like some of our housing policies are paying off after this meeting tonight so far. I think this is just, exactly what we're asking for. And I really appreciate the work that partnerships we have with Athens Housing Authority. And I hope that this newcomer to Athens finds this a good place to work and comes back, and then I will.
Joey.
I will make a motion to approve with the variances granted, both variances granted. And I would like, well, I'll do that first.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. The variances from Joey, seconded by Kristen. Discussion of the motion.
My discussion is I like the project. I like to have an older and walkable with the sidewalks, but it's going to be dead end sidewalks. Are we ever going to get to where there's sidewalks continued in front of the funeral home up to Target to actually make these people have a walkway? We just approved, we want a sidewalk, but yet now we have sidewalks to nowhere. And I don't see that funeral home leaving anytime soon, and we can't go in and force them. So at some point we've got to think about what we're approving and try to connect some of this sidewalks around. But I just want to put that out there.
Sarah.
Yeah, let's connect our sidewalks. We can't force the funeral home to build anything, but eminent domain is an option. Second that statement.
Sidewalk. All right, further discussion of the motion. Well, I'll just say, this seems like a great project, and really commend the applicant and the Housing Authority for partnering on this. And Lord knows we need a lot more senior specific housing in Athens. There are a lot of people that are house rich and need to downsize and stop having a house to take care of. And so more facilities like this I think there's an enormous unmet demand for this. A lot of the senior housing that we have here requires a great deal of money to live in. And so affordable senior housing is fantastic. So I'm delighted to see this, and that's all. Do another one next year. If I got a vote, which as the chair I don't, I would vote for this. Any further discussion? Stephen, do you want to take a roll call?
Motion to approve, Kinman,
Yes.
Beresford,
Yes.
Gehring,
Yes.
Morales,
Yes.
Pass. Sams,
Yes.
Sanders,
Yes.
Tucker.
motion passes unanimously.
Item 4, 200 Tremont Parkway. Item number PD 2024 04-0687. And we will begin with the staff report.
Thank you. Okay, we're just gonna essentially hop across the road here. There we go. So this is 200 Tremont Parkway, PD 2024/04/0687. So the request is to essentially remove a section of a plan development from that plan development. This would be 69 acres, just under that, and revert the zoning to its RM2 base. The applicant has submitted a non-binding concept plan. That conceptual plan shows by right apartments with just under 400 units. There is also a two connection points into that parcel, which would be the Preserve Drive and Hayward Allen Parkway. And there is also no connection requested for Tremont Parkway, which will come up in a little bit. So here is the aerial. As you can see, we have a fairly large parcel with a fairly large easement running through the center of it. We have the, which one's the green? Being colorblind is very unhelpful. I'm learning. All right, so we have the middle of Coney River going along the northern property line. We have an easement running through the center. As the conceptual plan shows, there are a few other easements on this property. We have the preserve, which is currently being built to the south, along with Hayward Allen Parkway or Toyota. And then we have the currently existing section of the Wood Valley plan development here to the east. There would be no change to the future land use. It would stay mixed density residential. And the only difference would be that this would be removing it from the plan development and it would be reverted back to by right zoning of RM2. This is one of the two entrances. As you can see, not a lot going on there. So this is the conceptual plan. As I mentioned before, you can see a few of the easements that are running through various areas. This parcel also has a lot of environmental aspects to it, not just the main river running through the northern portion. You can see the creek systems that are running through as well. The current plan development calls for the entire parcel to be subdivided into traditional neighborhood, single family detached neighborhood. That is clearly something that has not come to fruition over the past decades. And so much of that is because of a lot of these challenges with topography, with sewer, with environmental areas. So this is a conceptual plan. So what you're seeing is not binding, but it gets a good gist of what the site is working with. So for staff recommendation, we deem it partially compatible with the comprehensive plan. It does increase that supply of housing and encourages responsible environmental friendly development along our rivers and corridors and greenways. That being said, though, the concept plan that was given is very automobile focused and doesn't put much emphasis on multimodal transportation, but being a conceptual plan, not a binding plan, that is obviously something that can be rectified when it comes through for permitting. It is compatible with the future land use map, the zoning map, and ordinances. The one thing with the ordinance is being a conceptual plan. Obviously, it's not being looked at as much of a deep dive as it would for a binding plan or something that would be coming through permitting. But at the 10,000 foot level, it is compatible with everything and does follow our ordinances. Approval of the binding plan is not feasible with today's development, as I said before, and removing that plan allows for that infill density. We're defending it, I guess. So we are recommending approval with conditions. Those conditions, the first one is that the public street needs to be constructed along with the design standards of Athens-Clarke County Transportation Public Works Department in effect at the time of construction. And then it needs to connect to the Preserve Drive and Hayward Allen Parkway. The street connection to Tremont Circle and Tremont Parkway, as shown on the approved plan from 1995, would be removed and be no longer in effect. Essentially making that single family neighborhood its own and not having this kind of connect to it. Second condition would be for all sewer to be connected to the main sewer extension that was recently upgraded along the middle of Coney River. And then the third condition would be the Greenway Network Plan shows multiple trail connections running through this site. So with this proposal or any future developments, the condition would be that the developer needs to work with the Leisure Services Department to allow for space and proper connection. The current Greenway Network Plan does show almost all of those easements being part of the network plan, and this would be part of the Beach Haven part of the network. And with that, that concludes the report.
Thank you, ma'am. At this time, we will hear from the applicant.
All right, thank you. Ben Prue again from SPG Planners and Engineers. So appreciate everyone sticking around for this, especially if there's any neighbors or community members on this. We are representing Ardmore Residential. Just a little bit of context, they're based out of Greensboro, North Carolina. And they build and manage, quality apartments. So they kind of engaged us as kind of local land planning experts to help them through the entitlement process. Part of that was just because of the difficulties of this site, as Max kind of outlined for us. I honestly don't want to go through a lot of the details about, there's a lot going on. Ultimately, at the end of the day, this should be a fairly straightforward decision to revert it to its underlying RM2 zone. Currently, what exists is a plan development that was mentioned how long this has been in a plan development. It's been 40 years since the original one. This is the fourth. If you include that original process, this is the fourth, process and amendment process. And so ultimately, in the neighboring parcel as well, just across the highway, the topography and the challenges really just PDs work really well for ACC and for developers, helps really get some unique projects. But ultimately what's challenging is when you have a site that is so constrained by difficulties, it kind of removes a little bit of the flexibility of the development team to address those challenges without having to come back, do another PD amendment. And so that just causes a lot of risk, delay and, construction timeline. So our recommendation was to really work with the developer and try to get them to a buy right, option for them. So do want to just mention a couple of things. Like we said, it really shouldn't be a huge amount of conversation about what is going here. It's compatible with the underlying zone. But do want to mention there are two different types of apartment buildings, one of which is 3 or 4 story split garden style walk-ups. The others are more of a 4-story traditional low-rise product, both of which have a variety of 1 to 2 to 3 bedrooms. That's the product that this developer does, and they're comfortable with that. This is their first project in Athens or even Northeast Georgia. And I know they're interested in continuing to explore other options should this project be successful. As mentioned, this has been a long coordination just to get to this point. We need to amend the PD just because the remaining portion in the adjacent community will still remain. So we're just trying to dissolve the PD on the subject parcel here. Wanted to just address a couple of the, I guess, the conditions. The developers is very comfortable with the intent of those conditions. Starting with the third condition regarding the greenway, they're happy to provide that coordination with ACC Leisure Services. That's not only a benefit of having that greenway for the residents of this community, but for the neighbors as well. Regarding the sewer connection, ultimately, at the end of the day, they're only going to be able to do whatever sewer connection public utilities allows them. So we feel like that might be a little redundant. Should there need to be, ultimately, we just want the engineer to be able to have the ability to coordinate with public utilities, explore what the options are. Probably is not feasible to connect to that 8-inch line just due to the cost. But there is one, potentially two buildings that, should that be an option, would benefit from that. So if there is a need to have a condition on that, we would maybe just recommend adjusting the wording similar to the Greenway condition where will work in accordance with the coordination with public utilities to address how that sewer connection happens. Finally, just in regards to the first condition, just want to point out that the preserve drive is not currently dedicated. That is expected by everyone to occur after the adjacent property, the Grand Preserve, is completed. But once again, part of the challenges of this site has been it being encumbered by a binding site plan and maybe conditions. That dedication has not happened yet. It's out of control of the developer. So we would just suggest that for some reason, should that not happen, or there's any complications in finishing that project and dedicating that right of way, we would recommend maybe just tweaking the verbiage to, the developer is required to provide that public connectivity in accordance with ACC standards between Hayward Allen Parkway and the Preserve Drive once the Preserve Drive is formally dedicated. So, we're comfortable with the intent. We want to make that connection. It's just our obligation to make sure that the developer is not, being held to some risk that's outside of their control. So anyways, should be hopefully a straightforward vote on this. It's been unanimous so far. So on all the other votes, appreciate the time, especially just maybe considering the verbiage for some of those conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Prue. Can I just ask a clarifying question of the applicant before we move to public comment? I take it that the first condition about the roadway between the Preserve Drive and Hayward Allen Parkway, that the developer's obligation ends at the property lines of this parcel. So I'm not sure I understand the concern about if something gets gummed up with the Preserve Drive being dedicated to Clarke County, couldn't the developer fulfill the condition as written up to the property line of your parcel?
I think the only thing that is maybe the intricate part of this is we need to provide two connections basically across the stream. So ultimately, if for some reason we couldn't legally, we could build up to the property line. But if there's a requirement for us to serve two connections, for some reason that, Preserve Drive dedication got, caught up in something, we would need to figure out some way to route and make that second connection.
Okay.
So.
Okay, we may ask you more questions, but I just wanted to understand it better, but I think that'll do for now, and we'll.
Yeah, the developer is comfortable paving that road and providing that connection through the Preserve Drive up to the.
Understood. Okay, thank you. All right, at this time, we will open it up to members of the public. Is there any member of the public here wishing to speak in favor of this proposal? Is there any member of the public wishing to speak in opposition to this proposal?
My name is Austin Swanson. I am a resident of the,
What are we calling Tremont Parkway?
Tremont Parkway, Wood Valley, that's it. Our first concern when we heard this, proposal was the connection, coming from Tremont Parkway. Hearing that will not be utilized is great to hear. We do have a very small neighborhood, so any influx of traffic through there would be pretty heavy. Additionally, it is just become news to us that there is a late 18th century historic cemetery, sort of right directly in the center of their development. So that is the Solomon Edwards Cemetery. It's very fascinating, actually, if you get a chance to go over there. As a resident, I've also made note that this area, while is very hilly and heavily wooded, is also insanely marshy, especially when it comes to heavy rain, and all of this water pools down into that Oconee connector. Just some things to consider. Thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you, Mr. Sorensen. Is there any other member of the public wishing to speak in opposition to this proposal? All right, seeing none, we will bring it behind the rail. Who wants to start us off? Kristen.
I was just curious, like, what's the original development plan gonna look like for this?
It was gonna look like pretty much like what Wood Valley is, but it would go across the whole property with yards being with no homes obviously in any of the easements, and yards going up to the creeks and to the river. So
it's just carved out as much as possible.
it's what you guys see for single family developments.
Yeah.
Pretty commonly, it's just didn't really take into account any of the topography or environmental areas or easements or apparent cemetery.
That was from like 1995.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The first one is from the 80s.
the 80s.
They ran out of money several times.
Wood Valley is right down there in the bottom.
But they built,
Okay.
had to- several amendments. They ran out of money multiple times. And then by the time people were interested in this, development standards changed. And it's,
Yeah, because it's hard for me to figure how you would get a whole other neighborhood on there, so. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I don't really have any questions. I'm genuinely curious about the development. I think it's kind of cool. So, yeah, I'm curious to hear what anybody else has anything to say about it.
Yeah, I'll just say that this seems like a good project for the parcel, given the development challenges with the topography and the environmental areas, to condense the housing and pavement into a much smaller area rather than trying to develop all of it and cut it up into a bunch of separate parcels. Seems very sensible. And I think we all know that Athens is projected to need something like 10,000 housing. We need 5,000 housing units yesterday and 10,000 by 10 years from now. So to the extent that this already RM2 parcel can be developed without doing something like this seems like a pretty obvious yes for me, because if we don't build infill like this, we're going to end up with those houses will get built out in Madison or Jackson or Oglethorpe County, and then we'll have more cars on the road and more traffic and more other problems. And so building it closer in, close to Hayward Allen Parkway, where you have a signalized intersection, you have sewer, you have potentially, I mean, bus service certainly on the Atlanta Highway and by connecting to the Preserve Drive, maybe the possibility of transit through both of those large the Preserve and this new potential apartment development. It seems like exactly the right kind of housing, given the existing infrastructure that we have. And again, I don't get to vote, but I would vote for it if we did. Sarah. Karen.
I have a question for the applicant. Did you guys know about the cemetery?
Yeah, and I appreciate the comment that was made. So, yeah, and I'm actually personally love historic cemeteries. I've been involved in a lot of service projects, helping clean up and restore kind of abandoned, forgotten cemeteries. So that was one of the factors that we had to kind of work around. So we're trying to buffer that space, but at the same time, we're also hopefully providing basically public right-of-way access to the cemetery for anyone that would like to visit in any historic. So
Yes, Joey just pointed out to me, because I can't read anymore, but that it is marked on this map, and it's like right there in the middle, with all the little green space around it. It's amazing. I love that. Thank you.
yeah, and I'll just briefly mention, roughly 60% of the site is basically undisturbed because of all of the wetlands, the floodplain. And so to a certain degree, yeah, they're proposing basically a quarter of the max density that the project could have. And that's really just all they can do. So it would almost be great to get more density, more apartments to serve Athens, but so it's very limited by these constraints. So thank you.
I'd like to make a motion. We approve. We have one vote on this one. Yes. We approve this request with the first and third conditions only, and that we add the wording that the applicant suggested to condition 1, where at the end of the first sentence, we're adding once the preserve drive is formally dedicated. If that makes sense to staff.
I'll second that.
Because I think we're pretty clear that the sewer, that the regular process is in place, and ACC will take care of the sewer.
Okay, so to be sure, we all understand it. So we're cutting the second condition entirely and adding language at the end of the phrase Hayward Allen Parkway in condition 1 to say upon the dedication, or as after the dedication of the preserve drive to Athens-Clarke County is.
Yeah, I mean, basically whatever you all, I think you guys understand the spirit of it. So whatever the wording needs to be correct.
Yeah, the challenge with that is, and the applicant's agent spoke to this, to get the density in there that they're talking about, there will need to be 2 points of interconnection.
So you're saying it kind of, so what I was hearing him say was that would there be a situation where they need 2 points of connection and they are unable to do it at that preserve drive point because of something this other developer is or isn't doing?
Yeah, so it's an interesting timeline that we've got going on. And I'd say realistically, that project's going to be completed and the preserve drive will be dedicated and accepted all the way to the property line. I think that's probably going to happen, but let's play this out as if it doesn't. If that isn't the case and that road isn't completed, the final CO is not issued for the last building at the preserve project. And this development goes to get developed, because the Tremont interconnection would be taken away, the Hayward Allen Parkway interconnection is the only thing that would be there. So they would only be able to build what could be served by a single point of interconnection until that other roadway was finished. So they would have a choice. Either they build whatever that might be, those units, and stop and wait for the other project to be completed. Or they would assume the completion of the roadway in the dedicated right of way of the other project in order to get their total build out done. But they couldn't do the full density shown here, or it's gonna be a very low number, and I don't have the number to tell you, but with one point of access, they're not gonna be able to do a whole heck of a lot.
Right.
So to change the wording of your condition that way, I just want to say that out loud. And I
Yeah.
want to say that for the applicant to hear as well, that, you know, you're dealing with a straight zoned piece of property, and we will have that limitation to deal with if you only have a single point of access. There's not another reasonable point of access either, other than the tree line. And even that was tough with the topo. So the preserve drive really needs to be what it is.
And are you saying that if we don't put that in there, then that opens up the ability to connect to Tremont Parkway, which we're trying to avoid?
No. What I'm saying is if you leave the wording alone, the option is there. It makes it cleaner legally for them to then finish the other drive on the other property if they need to. If you're saying they get to stop at the property line, then it's just one big long cul-de-sac. And I think we'd have a weird thing to talk through, where you'd have an applicant who says, well, I got approved with a condition saying I can build to that property line.
Yeah.
And our fire and emergency services and our public works department would be saying, well, no, you need to have 2 points of interconnection and you don't have it yet. So I'm not really sure how that would play out. I started all that by saying, I feel pretty confident multifamily project will be finished and that road will be completed and accepted and won't be an issue. But it has taken a long time on that project.
And can I get clarity on that? You said that if it stops at the preserve, or if the preserve doesn't complete, they could go in and complete that in front of the.
It's feasible that they could enter into an agreement with that other property owner and developer and say, look, we need this, and so we'll finish the road.
Okay, so my next question is, when the preserve was it approved with that being completed?
Yes.
So at what point do we enforce what we approved?
The last CO.
When it's actually done.
So if they're just like, hey, we're not gonna do it, make them do it, they can hold off. And then if they were to come back and build that, does the investor get some kind of reimbursement for completing the
That would be
road?
a private transaction between the two developers.
that's it.
Ultimately, the roadway is going to be dedicated to Athens-Clarke County, and it would be public right of way.
I get that, but it's a huge expense building road. We know that. That's what makes developments go up. And so I guess I have a little bit of, I don't know, a little bit of heartburn there, saying development, then the preserve can come back and finish, and then the road got finished for them, cutting cost. I mean, that doesn't make sense, but I understand the final CO. But to me also, if we've approved for them to do it, then they should be held accountable to do it. But I just have a little heartburn on that.
So the only way that we can force the preserve to do what their condition is not issue COs for buildings on that property until they build the road up to the property line. Because looking at the 2021 aerial photos on Google Maps, it looks to me like they already have a road there that comes pretty close to the property line. Maybe the applicant could help us to understand the current state and
Yes, Casey Marvick, also with SVG. So we've been in communications with Public Works about this, and they're fully aware that on the site plan that was approved, that road is expected to be extended to the property line. I think the heartburn that we have and the developer has is, you know, if that developer goes belly up before, not necessarily the road is constructed, but before the right of way is dedicated. So then we're not legally allowed to cross that property line and tie into the road, because Athens-Clarke County does not own it at that point. So it's less about the roadway construction and more about the right of way dedication. So that's what we want to ensure happens in conformance with the site plan on the preserve.
okay, so if they went belly up, it's not that you're worried you'd have to build the last few feet of road. It's more that they could put a gate up.
Exactly.
And your
Would
resident
have the legal ability
to
to
exit it. And there wouldn't be a second access point.
And I don't know if there's a mechanism that Athens-Clarke County has that can support that, whether, you know, I don't know what that looks like, but
Eminent domain.
yeah. it's kind of out of our developer's control. We certainly want to connect there. That's the plan. We just want to make sure that it's legal to do so.
Okay. Do we have any other questions for the applicant?
No.
So Bruce, is the very last building under construction right now?
I'm not really sure off the top of my head. I know they're in the final phases. I think it may be a couple of buildings left to be built.
Yeah.
The only reason I'm bringing it up, and I understand the reason for the language that you're proposing for that condition number one to be reworded. I think the way it was worded in the staff report is helpful in that it makes it real clear that roadway interconnection is to be completed. To add some language that provides a perceived relief valve on making that interconnection, I don't think is going to be helpful for the applicant.
Okay. I think that makes sense.
Okay.
So can I just revise my motion? It's already been seconded.
If I accept your position.
Okay, so I think I'll just go with this kind of the original staff recommendation on that condition. So really all I'm suggesting is taking out that second condition.
Okay, so the motion is to approve with the first and third staff conditions. Motion by Sarah, second by Joey. Any further discussion of the motion?
Okay. Motion to approve conditions 1 and 3. Kinman,
Yes.
Beresford,
Yes.
Gary,
Yes.
Morales,
Yes.
Pass. Bams,
Yes.
Sanders,
Yes.
Tucker.
Yes.
Unanimous again.
All right. Brings us to item 5, under new business, which is a text amendment regarding sidewalks. Staff report.
From the Commission of Public Works Department.
Please.
I'm Daniel Sizemore. I'm the Bike Pedestrian and Safety Coordinator, Transportation and Public Works. It was great hearing all the positive comments about sidewalks. We're really working to kind of revamp our plans and start getting those sidewalks connected. One of those will be regarding the text amendment. And it basically removes, do you have an agenda I could use? Essentially allows for the, it removes the sidewalk exemption from light industrial. So do we have the slides that we sent over to you?
No, I'm sorry, we were all put together before that. You got a thumb drive I can pop it.
I'm just gonna have it for reading. So I can read the thing out to you guys. All right. Sorry about the delay. So, we would like, Transportation Public Works would like to restore the sidewalk requirement in EI zones to align site standards with complete streets policy and Athens in Motion plan. So this was originally, the exemption was from 2013, and that was intended to promote industrial development. But it currently conflicts with more recent transportation policy. Since then, we've had a new complete streets policy passed. We have a Athens in Motion plan, And one of these corridors that actually is with tier 1 pedestrian connectivity in our Athens in Motion plan is also within the zone. And had this exemption not existed, we would likely have at least 60 to 70% sidewalks along that corridor. So yeah, it's a pretty simple text amendment. Do you have any questions?
I do have a question, which is just, you mentioned in point 5 in the memo that TPW staff have noted multiple recent developments that were exempted by this provision at locations called for in the approved Athens in Motion plan. I'm just concerned about the other kind of TI or EO zone land where it's nowhere near anything called for by the Athens in Motion plan and otherwise not near residential. And so is there a way to, by tweaking this, perhaps provide a little staff discretion so that somebody who doesn't have to build 1,000 feet of sidewalk that just genuinely won't serve anybody. There might be, I don't know how many parcels there are, you might be able to quantify, but I was just concerned about sidewalks to nowhere that add a lot of expense. And there are very good reasons for them in a lot of places. And eventually they'll all be connected and so on. But I imagine that on the outskirts, there are probably some places where TPW staff next year, if this were adopted, would be telling a developer, well, you got to do a sidewalk, even though we acknowledge it doesn't really make sense here. So is there a way to tweak the proposal to give you all the discretion to waive it when it's not in the Athens in Motion plan, or to waive it where it doesn't connect to any residential areas or something like that?
I imagine that developers bring you guys requests for variances all the time. So I think in that case, the simplest thing would be they would ask for variance and that would be granted most likely. But without getting too deep into the technical aspect, Athens in Motion plan is a living document. We're really looking at connectivity throughout the whole county and to other counties as well. There's a lot that can happen in 20 to 30 years as far as land development goes. But there's a lot that can happen in transportation too. And especially in those more rural areas, a lot of our kind of most tragic fatalities are the ones that are just on the side of a rural road where there's no lighting, there's no sidewalk, there's maybe a steep embankment. And even just that small section that someone could have walked on could have saved their life. I think we could get into some technicalities with adjusting the language, but we felt that the simplest thing was to remove it. I imagine there's still going to be plenty of developers who will bring variances in, but it really allows us to at least come to the table and identify whether or not it's a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 Athens Motion project.
Okay, so you think the better approach would be for us to hear the variance rather than to create a staff variance procedure to allow you to green light a variance more, with less delay. And I mean, I understand the trade-offs, like it costs them more to come to us, but also then maybe some of those people just built the sidewalk because they decide they don't want to go through with it. And maybe that's better in the long run. But is there a downside to giving staff some power to approve a variance where it seems obviously appropriate?
I'll go ahead and say I kind of want to default to like the planning staff on that because I kind of work at the 10,000 foot scope of transportation planning.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if y'all have thoughts on that request.
The notion of having a standard for when to waive something, I think, is the question. And we would need a measurable standard, something that's objective, and not just the discretion of a single staff person's whim on when it's okay and when it's not okay. There are certainly times where extreme topography can be taken into account. But other than that, to tie it to something like we discussed during agenda review, to tie it to an approved set of plans or to tie it something that has measurable standards, I think would be the best course of action rather than to just leave it open-ended. Mark?
We need to ask about public comment before.
Probably.
I thought we were still doing the staff report.
Sorry.
Having a colloquy about that, but.
Just wanted to make sure.
But yeah, no, certainly we will not forget to do that. But yeah, it's a good point, Bruce. Any other comments?
Well, I would say this, the line that has been struck was one such measurable standard where distance proximity residential was a reason for having sidewalk. You know, and 500 feet was that linear measurement that we were talking about. So to think categorically like that, maybe getting at your point, where if you're in an area that is some distance from some type of amenity, or it's on some kind of corridor that's a designated truck route, or I don't know what it might be. What pushes back on that, though, is the fact that we do have an Athens in Motion plan that really does, I believe, Daniel, speaks to having sidewalk just about everywhere. I don't know that there's a corridor that is exempted, that was anticipated to be exempted in the Athens in Motion plan, but because that plan wasn't adopted, it is a guide stone. And it sets some aspirational goals, but it doesn't create measurable standards code.
Okay.
And if the current one doesn't, the next one definitely. Well, we're working on the revision right now, and we're also working on a Safe Streets for All action planning grant. We've got $1 million grant for that, and that should begin within the next couple of months. So we're really going to have a lot of very actionable, achievable ways of trying to reduce fatalities and make our roads safer. So
good. All right. Well, thank you. That concludes the staff report. We will open it up to public comment. Is there any member of the public here wishing to speak in favor of the proposed text amendment? Is there any member of the public here wishing to speak in opposition to the proposed text amendment?
Yes, Grant Whitworth, live at 760 Meg Street, Whitworth Land Corporation. We represent, I'd say 90% of the owners in that purple there. And, you know, we worked very hard to get this removed years ago. Brad told me it was 10 years ago. I didn't even realize that, and it was a great effort for Clarke County to show that they are business friendly. This is something that's been studied and talked about and worked with the community to work about, to the fact that we're even here just on a whim to slip this in as a text amendment, which didn't come from planning. I don't even know if that's legal. Y'all have to tell me that, but there's been zero input, zero discussion, and there's going to be a lot of upset people about this, especially due to the amount of work that went into it. Why this was taken, there's a lot of reasons for. I don't even want to, I hadn't had time to start discussing it. Just to come in there and just, they're going to take it back out. I don't know if that's even legal. So we're very against it. There's a lot of people that I've already been on the phone with all day today. I mean, we didn't even have this text amendment in print until I think it was yesterday. So now that everybody's aware of it, there's going to be a lot of talk about it. So anyway, that's my statement. Thank you. Hopefully it'll just be sent back, because this isn't something you just take lightly with the amount of time that's been put into it previously. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Whitworth. Is there any other member of the public wishing to speak in opposition to the proposed text amendment? All right, this will bring it behind the rail.
I have a question. We can either vote this down or send it back, or if we send it back, do we put a time frame, 1 meeting or 60 days, or is there a time limit they have?
And there's really not a time limit. What we always recommend to you is, if you're going to send it back, be specific as to what it is you want them to work on further before they bring it back again. And that may be, work on the amendment and a request to meet with chamber or to meet with somebody, in the community that they've not met with yet.
I guess I kind of look at it grant's point of view, I don't know why I agree with sidewalks in certain places, but some of these places, I don't see the sidewalk there. So when I say send it back, I say send it back to why it even needs to come back forward. Is the way I'm looking at it.
Sarah.
Yeah, I feel like I got a good understanding of why it was here. The background seemed pretty clear to me. It's just that we've got EI zoning in places where people walk. But then, the issue is that we have a lot of E and I zoning in places where we do not anticipate that a number of people will walk. I'm inclined to, I think it might be best for the amendment to go back and to sit and try to find brainstorm some way of having, I don't know, some review, some administrative review that does not require the whole process of going to the Planning Commission or the Merit Commission.
Alice and then Christine.
I agree that, my main concern here is that it did kind of come, I didn't know this was coming, and I do follow the work that our new director's doing and also Athens in Motion. So, I do feel a little, blindsided, maybe that's not a word. But to get back to what, Brad was just telling us, I am friendly to this, but I would like to see, along the lines of what Sarah just said, I would also like to be able to, take a good look at the Athens in Motion map. I don't want to ignore, for example, recreational uses of sidewalks that may involve, bicycles. So I just need more detail about what we're seeing on the ground right now. So that I can make, or y'all can if I'm not on the commission when this comes before you again, but we can make a better assessment of what's on the ground right now and also think meaningfully about, the possible benefits of putting in sidewalks even where we don't think they should go down. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm rambling now. I would like more information. And along those lines.
Thank you. Kristen?
Yeah, in general, I really don't have a problem with amendment because I thought it was a really good point that if you are building in an EI zone where there's no sidewalks around and you want a variance from the sidewalk, then you ask for a variance. Like, I feel like that's pretty, and we've had multiple sidewalk discussions tonight even. So yeah, I mean, I would counter how many bike and ped advocates were in the room when the Chamber of Commerce was having this discussion in 2013. I mean, so it goes both ways. I mean, yeah, things change sometimes. And if somebody's want to come to Clarke County because they don't want to build a sidewalk in front of their factory, I mean, how much do they even care about the community then? I mean, this is part of where we live. It's providing amenities to the place where you're willing to invest. So I don't know. It's, this doesn't bother me. I'm happy to vote on it, or we can send it back to get more clarity, but it's fine with me.
I'll make a motion to send it back.
I think I saw Alex's hand raised and I had another comment too before.
So if we vote no, does it just, can it still come back without us? We can just vote it down. Does that mean it's down for 100 years or?
Come back.
If they can try it again with more time, right?
And the motion would be, what would be acceptable, I think, is a denial with comment. And denying something tonight because it's a text amendment, it's not like a zoning action where they have to wait. They could come back the very next cycle.
Yeah. So it's just delaying, if nothing else, so the community can get behind one way or the other or understand. And it does sound like the community played a part in having that put in there. And honestly, I don't know the project that I recused myself from. I don't know what variances got done, and I was trying to listen, but I got talking to somebody out there. But I wouldn't put my trust on it always that, hey, just because it's out here, that the next group of people may not go along with the variance and vote it down. So I like the idea of not jumping on this and striking that out just yet. It seems pretty, I'm looking at y'all, but I guess I should be looking at y'all, that we give this a little more time. Because it was there for a reason. And the question would be, why was it there? And we've kind of answered that, so I'm not really asking now, but.
I'm already in favor one time, so.
Yeah.
The only thing I would add, I mean, historically, if planning department staff generates a text amendment and we bring it to you and you don't support it, it stops at that point. We don't send it forward. Given this one being a little bit different, that is coming from another department within the government, we would have to coordinate. I think they would still have the ability, if the public works director chose to send it forward to the commission with a recommendation of denial. Now, if it's denied there, there's no 12-month waiting period on an amendment like there is on a rezoning. They could do additional work and bring it right back.
But with that statement, if we refer it back, they can still not listen to us and go forward.
Yeah. No, if you table it with direction, it stops at that point. You haven't taken action on it yet, but to table it and send it back for more work.
Because I guess my point to what Alex said is I'd rather table it and make them come back with something than if we deny it and they either move forward or deny it. And as we didn't see it until the last minute, they not get public comment and just bring it right back instead of us tabling it. So now the public knows that it's tabled and they are having to discuss it and they are having to get input. Is how I view it.
So to table with direction.
Right.
I guess my comment was, like Alice, I think I'm generally favorably inclined toward this change, but I agree that more information would be useful. I also agree with Sarah Gehring that the amendment itself probably has a better chance of success at the next level with some additional support, such as it says in the text of the memo, there are some developments that have happened that would have needed sidewalks, but they didn't because of this exemption. And they're in the Athens in motion plan. And that can obviously be represented graphically on a map. And that might be helpful to people to conceptualize what this all means, to see a map of, oh, here's 1,000 feet of sidewalk that really actually would have been useful for people who get to work on bikes and stuff, but or people walking near residential areas. But we don't have those sidewalks now. So graphics about where we should have gotten sidewalks but didn't, and graphics about maybe layer onto that, have there been pedestrian or bike crashes at locations in EI zones where this proposed change would require sidewalks. I think that kind of stuff is going to be helpful to us. More importantly, it's going to be helpful to the county commission in evaluating it, and that's whose decision on this is ultimately going to matter. So it seems to me that tabling it with direction to generate some more supportive information, make a sort of stronger case for it. That seems like the right thing to do to me tonight. And in the course of that, I think it might not be a bad idea for TPW to have a meeting with the Chamber of Commerce. It may be that agree, and maybe that they won't, but maybe they can find a middle ground where a streamlined process for gaining exemption, like a staff, criterion whereby staff can grant an exemption where it's necessary, without the expense of going through the time-consuming process of coming to us and the Mayor and Commission. That might satisfy the chamber. It might not, but it certainly is a conversation that's probably worth having. And so I think maybe this isn't quite ready for me to feel comfortable voting for it, although do I vote on text amendments? I'm not sure. I guess you can vote on those. But anyway, I think it would be easier to support this with a little bit more support and perhaps a little more time for it to mature in consultation with other stakeholders. Because I wouldn't want to vote this up and then just have it die at the mayor and commission level. Sarah Beresford.
I generally agree that giving it time makes sense. I am inclined to agree with Kristen, in that, you know, I am persuaded by what Daniel says and why this is important, but I just wonder if it has, like Sarah was saying, more chance of success, if it could be, like, I wonder about it being a little bit more, you know, so it can't really be pinned to this plan that hasn't been formally adopted, but could it be that TBW can identify certain corridors? Like if your property abuts this corridor and this is the identified corridor of interest to us, you have to do sidewalk. Like that it could be as specific as that, not so much pinned to this unadopted plan, but in the language. You know, and it might be that some of the business and economic development interests could be addressed by, you know, I don't really know, like just the I zone property out there. I'm not sure what that is, but like, seems kind of sensible to me that if the zoning has E in it, yes. I without the E, maybe not so much. Like I don't know what that is right this second, but like to try to just put a little bit of sort of some common sense into there, or some, not common sense really, I guess what I mean is just identifying these high probability corridors, or these priority corridors for safe multimodal transportation. I mean, ideally we have that everywhere, but maybe there's some priorities that are identified. And I think also I'm a little less interested in, I'm less interested in the Chamber of Commerce. I'm more interested in our Economic Development Department. I would be really interested to hear what they have to say. Because my sense is that they would sort of understand that nuance and could help craft something that they feel would sort of address some concerns on the business end or on the economic development end. So my preference would be that we table it with these comments and see if they can come back with something that is a little more palatable to the various groups that will have opinions on this.
I agree. I'm involving economic development, but I also like Chamber of Commerce to table. But I agree with everything that Sarah just said. Can I go ahead and make a motion? Can I make a motion that we table with comments? And we accept that the comments we've given are in the record, and of course, if anyone wants to make any other comments before we vote.
Well, for formality, I will remove my motion since I did technically make one.
I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
He asked if you could make a motion.
I'm so sorry.
I technically did make it.
Joey,
but it was.
Please say.
I just want to make,
because
we have an attorney in the room, we need to follow proper procedure. I made my motion, I'll withdraw it, I'll allow you to do it.
Okay, I do apologize, Joey.
You're fine.
Getting a little faded in the parade right now.
Aren't we all? So is that sufficient motion to table with comments, and the comments being the record of this meeting? And Daniel, you can review the YouTube video to get anything that you want to review out of that. Is that enough? You guys think? Okay. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Sarah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Joey doesn't even get to second. Joey's been extremely helpful in this conversation and really pretty much laid out exactly what we need to do.
Steven's putting that in the minutes right
Yeah,
now.
thank you. Motioner really wants to get Joey credit for this.
Motion to table. Hinman,
Yes.
Beresford,
Yes.
Gehring,
Yes.
Morales,
Yes.
Pass. Sams.
Yes.
Sanders,
Yes.
Tucker.
Yes.
Unanimous. Motion passes.
Thanks. And that brings us to item 6 under new business, text amendment for science, research and development zoning.
Good evening, I'm Ilka McConnell. I'm the Director of Economic Development for Athens-Clarke County Government. I came before you in the fall of 2022 to create the science, research and development use. And I am coming back to you this evening to ask your consideration of expanding the use into CO and CN. You can see the limitations. I can't see them. I don't see that well. I do have it right here in front of me. The idea would be the current science, research and development is not allowed in CO or CN zoning, not permitted. And proposed in CO, it would be in L3, which states uses are limited to no more than 10,000 square feet, except grocery stores, science, research and development facilities, and colleges, which may have 36,000 square feet of gross floor area per lot. So that's for CO proposed. And for CN would be a little smaller. Uses are limited to no more than 10,000 square feet of gross floor area per lot. The reason being, we still have companies that are working on moving out of the UGA incubator, and we have been working with them very diligently over the last year and year and a half. We have a lot of commercial zoning. Commercial office especially has a lot of features that we've realized, we've been learning as we've been going as well. Commercial office has a lot of features that we've realized would be very beneficial for these types of businesses to move out. A lot of the reason is it's very expensive to develop lab space. And so existing buildings are more affordable than newly built buildings. And the renovations really matter as to how much renovation needs to take place. And so we do have a good bit of CO zoning. Mark, CO is can you help me? I can't
Yes.
far enough to see the key.
CO is the purplish one, so we're looking at Lumpkin, we're looking out Prince Avenue here towards the Loop and Hills. And then we're looking over on Research Drive, Gaines School, a little bit along Cedar Shoals there. The more peachish tone is the CN zoning, which is that big plan development around Lakewood, ironically enough, and then feathered there throughout and a lot through the Normaltown, Prince Avenue areas there. A little bit up to the north as well, up 72 and then Nowhere Road.
So this is really important for next step space after an incubator. So as a reminder, science, research and development is when a company is developing a product. Many times they'll be in clinical trials or regulatory trials of some sort. They're not in full production. They're maybe doing some limited production, but they're not yet at a point where they're full production, which would usually move them to EI zoning or I zoning. So this is sort of an interim state for these businesses, and it's an important step for them in their life cycle as they're developing their business, raising capital, and having a product that's fully approved and able to be sold for revenue.
Thank you. Is there any member of the public wishing to speak to this text amendment? I'm sorry, Mr. Connolly.
You just said.
Ending that you're done?
I'm done.
Okay. No, I'm asking you. I'm not.
Just in case you have questions.
Okay, yeah. You have questions.
You good? Okay.
I'll let you know. Thank you. Sorry, I thought you said.
It's good.
Is there any member of the public wishing to speak?
I'll speak. I'm still here. This one actually has been spoken about a lot. I was for it the first time. I felt like we should have already put these other 3 designations in there when it was approved originally. I mean, this is very needed because we do have a problem with the cost of construction right now and sidewalks and everything. It's very expensive. So to build new buildings is very tough. We want to be able to utilize the existing buildings in our area for other uses, especially ones that can be for research and technology. So anyway, thank you.
Is there any other member of the public wishing to speak to this proposal? None, we will bring it back behind the rail.
Motion to approve. Second.
By Sarah, second by Kristen. Any discussion? We do have. Show of hands, all in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you for saving the easiest of the easy for the end. Took so long. Yeah, for a lot of yes. Staff did a good job.
Love you, man.
It's the last time we'll all here.
Okay, so that brings us to the other business agenda. Planning Commission Chair's report. I have none. Planning Director's report.
I think we've got a land use steering committee report on the agenda before me.
Get all the draft agenda that they have. And it's the final agenda you guys got yesterday, so.
So there was a answer there. So item 2 under other business, future land use steering committee report.
Okay, so I'll get you up to speed and then I'm gonna hand it off. We had our first future land use steering committee meeting this Tuesday. This is a group that was appointed by Mayor Gertz to serve as a guiding force in the preparation of the next future land use map. So we're at a point where we have just finished our spring public input just this past Monday. A really excellent event that Max and Steven put together at Clarke County at Clark Central, and had a bunch of students participate. But that was our last public input event. We've got a really good response. The online survey, for all of its warts, has still had good participation. Visual preference survey that we've administered at the 10 events that we held during the spring has had a pretty good, robust response. The school district continuing to use it even with elementary students, which has been kind of cool. So we're going to tabulate all that data and we'll get it back to you. But literally the very next day, we started the work with the Future Land Use Steering Committee, and the charge that they've been given through the mayor is to meet on topical areas and translate the growth concept map into a draft of a future land use map that will then be voted on by that body with a recommendation that comes to the Planning Commission. As part of the compilation of that group, Alex Sams was requested by the mayor to serve as chair of that group, and Alex ably and capably did so on Tuesday.
He's a good committee chair.
And he certainly is. And so what we're going to do is have a standing item going forward on all of the agendas that you receive until their work is done. I apologize. Where Alex has an opportunity to give a report on the work that's been completed. And to the extent that staff is needed to comment, we will also comment on data or other points of progress. But Alex, is there anything you would add?
Well, we have been hard at work and we're already talking about replacing sidewalks with privet hedges and stacked walls. That's the first item 1.
That's in the visual preference survey.
Yeah.
It's everybody agreed unanimous. That's what we don't know it's stone yet. No, but yeah, the meeting went well. It's a good group of people. 16 out of 20 something made it there. I think 8 or 10 couldn't make it.
2 appointees per commissioner.
Pardon?
2 appointees per commissioner.
I think 1 appointee, was it 2 or 1?
1 per commission district. And then there was a series of groups that were represented that were called out. So UGA, the Clark County School District, hospitals, that sort of thing.
Great. That's a good
Yeah,
one.
a good mix though of thinkers, as I always like to say. Our next meeting, which will be really our first working meeting, will be May 20th. We'll try to do 1 meeting per month until work is done, which hopefully will be September, October, right in there more than likely. But yeah, good group. That's kind of all I can tell you so far.
All right, thank you. That brings us to the planning directors.
And I do have a report from Commission Action. This goes back to their April voting meeting. They had 4 items to consider. First item was the Capitol on Wilkerson Street. It was approved. The rezoning out of the corner of Spring Valley Road and Moss Road, which was the conceptual convenience store type use, was denied. The Forest Road, Barnett Shoals Road townhouse development, the applicant actually requested to withdraw, and they denied it, did not accept the withdrawal, but went ahead and denied the zoning action. And the proposed text amendment, type 1 planning action procedures was approved. And this was approved as initially presented. And that was the twist on this one, that there's a section in the code, in the same procedure section, after it talks about that the planning commission shall make a recommendation and it shall be forwarded to the mayor and commission for consideration. There's another statement that says that the recommendation of the planning commission shall be advisory only and shall not be binding on the mayor and commission. And so what that opened up for them, it allowed them to either consider your recommendation or to return to the original drafted amendment as presented to you. Because all they can do is approve or deny. They still couldn't modify, they couldn't change the language, but they could, and what they did was selected the version that you all considered and made some changes to and then voted on that. And that was approved unanimously. So those are my 4.
Thank you, Brad. Miscellaneous announcements. Are there any?
Well, I just sort of wanted to pick up on, I know Alex, you had brought this up during agenda setting, and it was kind of frustrating to watch that item happen for us, or speaking for myself. I feel like it put the planning commission in kind of a weird position. I think we're being presented by members of the media as having our little like rebellion or some little power trip. And, I don't think anyone intentionally did that, but to me, it was really frustrating to watch. I know that I watched you tell the county commissioners to watch the meeting, and a couple of the really vocal ones, I am 100% sure that they did not. I mean, I just don't think, I felt like I was really proud of our discussion. Like, I came into that discussion with one thought and was convinced by others on this body of why we should actually sort of hold firm on that one. And I don't know, I guess I just wanted to state that for the record. It was weird. I think that we, I'm just gonna probably repeat myself like I do every time I talk. So that's it. Like, I wish that hadn't happened. I think it set up something with this new county commission or this current county commission that's already having some weird dynamics, for lack of a better word. And I think it just kind of inserted us into that in a way that worries me in the long run when it comes to the sort of relationship between these two bodies, because here we have a couple of them at least who now think that we're on a power trip. And I don't think, we all know how little power we have. I mean, I think it's very clear, like sometimes when we're up to our necks in a big discussion, I have to remember, or we could just kick it up to those guys and they can decide, because the buck does. I mean, that was something they said multiple times, is we have to have control over this because the buck stops with us. We know that.
We have to try to stop the buck.
Yeah, and the conversation that we had demonstrated that we did understand that the buck doesn't stop with us. So I don't know, I just wanted to state that for the record because it frustrated me, and I don't think it was anybody's fault. But anyway, I just wanted to say that.
I'll add along that, because I was part of that discussion. I don't look at things as the current mayor and commission. I look at them as the mayor and commission I don't know. That way it keeps me speaking honest. And so it's always that way. So that's kind of why I liked the cycle of it. I felt as well, not to bring it all back up, but it kind of sort of takes the heat off of them a little bit in that moment to deal with it. It's got to come back, and so they can get it, they can push it. But Yeah, it's not always a matter, just so they know, it's not this commission, it's the commission we don't know, because I don't trust the commission in the future that I've never met. Therefore, you got to lay things out in a way that builds that honesty and trust, puts it on paper.
That's a good way to look at it.
Any other miscellaneous comments or announcements?
Make a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn by Alice. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Kristen. All in favor?
Aye.
So Alex made every motion but one.
Almost no hitter going and then
I think I love to, I just started playing.
But I think I allowed at least two others